Okay, welcome everyone to our Grassroots lobbying webinar. You should start to come in. We're going to get started here in just a moment as I see you all joining us. So we've got two ways for you to communicate with the attendee or with the panelists tonight. One is the Q&A, and that's where we're going to be asking questions. And then there's also the chat. I'm going to ask that you do not turn the chat on to, perfect, that's exactly what I was looking for. I was hoping that somebody would chat me and tell me where you were from. So we've got Claudia on from Alaska. No, that was absolutely perfect. If you could please chat in and tell me where you're from and maybe what your, oh, look at them all coming. Excellent. Hello. There we go. I was looking for my participants list. So many people coming in. It's so wonderful to see you. I'm going to ask that because we have so many people coming in, we're approaching just in these first few seconds over 700 people registered, and I'm sorry, not even registered, 700 people already logged on. So I'm going to ask that you do not turn it on to all panelists and attendees, because there is no way for anybody to keep up with the chat. If you're chatting to all panelists and attendees, what happens is the chat is always going to cover the screens of people watching on their phones or on their iPads, and they're never going to actually be able to see myself or our guest, Matt Brainerd, tonight. So questions go into the Q&A because there's no way for us to keep comments or keep watch of the chat room with this many people on. We have now surpassed 700 people on. This is fantastic. We're so happy that you all can join us. So the reason why I'm delaying for just a few minutes is to allow time for the people who were in the waiting room, like you were just a few minutes ago, to get on, because Zoom goes through and checks them all in. And so I see that that is coming. And so please do continue to let me know where you are from. So I've got Marvin from Georgia, and Carson from Arizona, and Christy and Maggie from Oklahoma, and Chris, wow, they're flying by my screen so fast. Nicole from Philly. It is so good to see you all tonight. So my name is Dina Espenchade. I'm the director of Grassroots Coalitions at the Leadership Institute. And let me launch my presentation here, and then I'll share my screen, and we will get started with the presentations. So there we go. I'm just going to set this where it's at. It is so wonderful to see all of you here. I'm excited because in my job here at the Leadership Institute, under normal times, I get to travel around the country, meeting you all in your own communities. And we are starting to get back to that. I just got back from a training in Chicago just yesterday, as a matter of fact, and we'll be back out in the Illinois this coming weekend as well. To learn more about where the Leadership Institute will be doing trainings like this one, only live, you can go to leadershipinstitute.org, leadershipinstitute.org. Okay, let's see here. I think I am ready to begin. And wow, we're at 800 people on. This is fantastic. I'm so happy that you guys all joined us and that you are excited about this topic and want to learn more about grassroots lobbying and the First Amendment and big tech and such. Let me find, sorry, since the last time I did one of these, they did an update, and I'm looking for where I share my screen. Just a moment here. Let me just make this big. Aha, there's the share screen button. Thank you. This is the screen I want to share, and share sound, and then we're going to get started. Here we go. Excellent. Okay, so once again, my name is Dina Espenchade. I'm the director of Grassroots Coalitions at the Leadership Institute. Tonight, we're going to be talking about grassroots lobbying, and specifically, most of it is going to be about developing your testimony and how to speak with the legislators. So a little bit about the Leadership Institute. For those of you who have not taken a Leadership Institute course before, if you haven't, if you could please write in again to me, just let me know if this is your first Leadership Institute training, because that kind of helps us find out who our audience is. The Leadership Institute has been around since 1979. Whoops, hold on, let me get my chat screen out of the way. Lots of people saying it is their first. It's fantastic to see that. So Leadership Institute's been around since 1979. We were founded by a gentleman named Morton Blackwell. At the time, Morton was the national committee man, well, he still is the national committee man for the Republican Party in Virginia, but at the time he was working for the Ronald Reagan campaign. And as he was working for that campaign, he found out that a lot of the young people they were hiring to campaign for them were fresh out of college and just did not know how to actually run a campaign. They didn't know how to use the political technology in order to win. So Morton took it upon himself to start traveling around the country to train up the young staffers on how to win elections. And from that grew the Leadership Institute. We have our flagship school, which is the Youth Leadership School. And then beyond that, we've got the other schools. We've got 47 different schools. And also we've got Campus Reform. Many of you may have heard of Campus Reform. That's our online newspaper fighting liberal bias. Since 1979, we have trained over 228,000 people to be better at grassroots advocacy and public policy. And we do that by doing trainings like this one. During these special times, we've taken all of our trainings that are normally done in person, either in communities like yours or in our offices in Arlington, Virginia. We've put them online via presentations like this one. And so we're happy to have that. And you can check out all of the presentations that we have scheduled coming up this year at leadershipinstitute.org/trainings, leadershipinstitute.org/trainings. There we go. The Leadership Institute is a 501c3 nonpartisan nonprofit educational organization. And what that means is it is our mission to train people, to educate people. And our function is a lot like your schools or a university. So we are a nonprofit. What this means is that we don't endorse political candidates, political parties, or pieces of legislation. We have open admissions policy. I don't care what your partisanship is, you are welcome to take our classes. And also our views are not necessarily the views of our faculty. So any stories that I share tonight that I picked up from the campaign trail or any videos that I share tonight, it's not an endorsement of those candidates. It is just to educate and inform you about the lessons that I learned while working on those political campaigns. We are conservative and we do endorse and support conservative ideology and conservative thoughts. The Leadership Institute graduates work in grassroots, in public policy, all across the many, many different sectors and all across the country. And you can find them in members of Congress. I think we've got 30 members of Congress. I'd have to look that exact number up. But some of the ones that you might recognize, Dan Crenshaw, Representative Dan Crenshaw from Texas, is trained by the Leadership Institute. We just had 4 new members of the U.S. House trained by the Leadership Institute and get elected as freshmen this year after the 2020 elections. Next slide. So this is what our website looks like. If you come to our website to learn more about the trainings, you can see the different types of trainings that we have here. Let me find my cursor. There we go. Our campaign trainings are usually the most common, the ones that most people come to. They come to learn how to be candidates and how to be campaign managers. There's also the activism trainings, campus trainings, fundraising trainings, lots of different things coming up. So take a look at our website to see what's coming. I am going to email each and every one of you a follow-up email. You'll get a copy of all of the slides that I am sending or that I am presenting tonight. You're going to go into this area on our website called My Account, and you're going to create a login there. And from there, you can download all the slides as well as some extra material that I'll be sending you to help you along. For example, we're going to be doing a Leesburg grid tonight. I'm going to send you copies of the Leesburg grids that you can build your own Leesburg grid on whatever issues you choose to work on. So now let's get started. Oh, a little bit about me. I am Dina. I am the Director of Grassroots Coalitions here at the Leadership Institute. I've been here for more than 4.5 years. Before that, I worked on the Trump campaign as the field director in Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, and Washington, D.C., in charge of all the volunteers and the Get Out the Vote activities during the primaries in 2015 and 2016. And before that, I held many different roles and responsibilities throughout the public policy sector. So I've been a lobbyist both on Capitol Hill and on state house issues. I've also worked on different campaigns at every single level except for being a candidate. So I've got about 23 years of experience in some sort of grassroots advocacy and public policy, and it is my pleasure to bring that information here to you tonight. I'm going to pause this screen share because I'm going to bring on our speaker tonight. The co-host for this is Matt Brainerd from Look Ahead America. Many of you all joined us tonight because you saw Matt on camera, on film, doing different presentations and such. And so we are happy to have Matt join us, and he's going to talk about the issues that matter to him. Let me just put this down here. Hold on just one moment. And we're going to switch out so that Matt can take the seat. I'm going to hide the
video. Hey, thanks for joining us. The turnout here has been far more than I ever anticipated. The number of registrants, I think, may set a record, I think, for this program. First, I want to thank Leadership Institute for allowing us to use their studios, having their staff come and help us. Miss Dina is a treasure trove of information on how to advance an agenda, particularly at the state legislative level. And that's what we're going to learn how to do tonight. I want to share with you just a brief history, though, of the organization Look Ahead America. I know most of you have come to know me through the Voter Integrity Project, which is sort of an ad hoc group that we started in the aftermath of the election in November. But it now is part of a C3 that I actually started 4 years ago with 30 former Trump campaign staffers, with the objective of registering, educating, and turning out to vote disaffected patriotic Americans, and now expanding that mission to taking patriot citizens, teaching them how to become activists, how to engage, and how to advocate for patriotic issues on the state legislative level. If you look across the country right now, particularly in Washington, D.C., you may think that patriotic causes, conservative causes, don't have much of a chance. We don't have a lot of strength right now in Washington, D.C., and maybe that's the truth. However, if you look across the country, there's tremendous strength that we currently have in state legislatures. A lot of state senators, state legislators, state reps who are very friendly to patriotic ideas. And we have to leverage our strengths. And that begins with you in the states. I'll tell you, if you ever tried to talk to or get a hold of your US congressman or US senator, good luck. You can show up all the way to DC, you might get a 30-second photo op or a piece of candy off the receptionist's desk, but you're not going to get too much further. Whereas at the state level, if you organize a couple neighbors, a couple of friends, and petition your state's representative or your state senator to go try to meet them, they actually pay attention. It's much easier. It's a much lower threshold to get the attention of the state legislatures than it is to get the attention of Washington, D.C. And it's been that way for a while. So we're going to take those two things together, the strengths we have at the state legislative level and the ease with which an organized effort can have an impact, and put those together. And tonight you're going to learn a little bit about how to get started with that. So I just want to talk a little bit about you for a moment. Most Americans, I guess you could say most of them kind of vote, but that's pretty much the limit of their engagement with the political process. Because you registered for this, you took time out of a busy Wednesday evening in the middle of the week, hump day, to spend 3 hours with us learning how to do this. That really sets you apart as somebody that can have an impact, a real impact on the direction of this country. I mentioned that Look Ahead America was originally founded to reach out to disaffected patriotic Americans. And my very favorite example of a disaffected patriotic American of a rural or blue-collar background is Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. Consider a child of poor farmers just barely making it by, living in a world of black and white where it seems the elites have just passed her by. And no one's really concerned with the problems she has or the problems of her family. And then she gets blown away to some horrific, fantastical world where she's all alone and she doesn't really know what she can do. She doesn't have access to make changes to get what she wants, which is to get back home. But then she finds out at the end of that film that if she just taps her heels together and says, "Home sweet home," back to Kansas she goes. She had that power the entire time. And in the same way, you have the power, and you've had it for a very long time, to get active, to register disaffected patriotic Americans and get them to turn out to vote, to organize in your states, to start advocating for the causes that are important to you. And that starts tonight. And we're going to be on a very long and difficult road together, but this is the road we have to take to save our country. And because of that, I have to ask you for patience. Patience with me, patience with our organization, patience with how we train and how we learn to train you better, patience with yourselves. But it'll be worth it in the end, because what we're undertaking here, I'm not sure there's ever going to be a greater cause outside of your own personal family or your church that will have a long, meaningful impact for generations to come. So the issues we're going to talk tonight, we're actually focusing on fighting corporate censorship. I know that voter integrity is a very important issue. It's vital, actually. And we'll be talking about that in the next couple of weeks. We'll be rolling out our policy objectives for voter integrity reforms at the state level. But we're taking a little bit more time with it because it's a complicated issue. And we want to make sure our recommendations on those policies are solid. But we can't really talk about voter fraud or other issues like that if we're censored off of these platforms. So one of the policies we're going to try to advance and that we're geared towards training you to engage with tonight is trying to develop what we call free speech states. There are concealed carry sell issue states. There are right to work states. And soon there will be, if we have our way, free speech states. And the premise is simple. These corporations who run social media networks, technology firms, financial institutions may have the right to decide who they do business with and who they don't, can decide what speech is permitted on their platforms and what speech is not. But what they're not entitled to is to enrich themselves with tax dollars paid by citizens whom they are denying First Amendment rights, the ability to politically organize for legal activities, or to engage in gainful employment or run a legal business. So I'm going to run through, this is on our website. I'm going to run through the state policy objectives on this particular issue. And this is what we encourage you to communicate with your state legislators about and say that you want these kinds of protections in your state. Starting with government spending on social networks that censor legal speech. What we're saying is that the government will not do any business, not spend money with any of these organizations, these social media networks, and not just the state government, but any of the subordinate governments within that state, such as counties, cities, towns, etc. So that means no marketing money spent on platforms that censor. And I'm not going to name check them, but you know very well which ones they are. It also means that we're going to prevent states from doing technology contracts with firms that deplatform businesses. You may have heard what happened to Parler, for example. Well, that same company that did that for Parler has billions of dollars in contracts with state governments. And if they discriminate on the basis of perfectly legal speech of businesses that would contract with them, well, guess what? Then they're not entitled to do business with the state or any of those state entities any further. Conducting business with blacklisting financial institutions. We're saying that the state won't hold any accounts and won't permit any finances to transact using banks or payment processors or other financial institutions that blacklist people on the basis of their use of legal speech or their engagement with legal business. Like say if they're not willing to conduct finances or hold a bank account for somebody who's engaging in a legal activity, legal business like manufacturing firearms, well, the state's not going to do business with them. It's also going to prevent the state from doing work with corporations that discriminate in employment with people who engage in political activity and free speech on their own time. If you fire somebody because of their politics, well, I guess you're entitled to do that in many places where it's illegal, but you're not entitled to get a contract from the state government anymore. And finally, we'll prevent the state from investing either rainy day funds or pensions in these corporations. They will have to divest from any corporation that censors legal speech on its public platforms or kicks off customers because they don't like their politics. And I'm actually happy to say that Florida, under Governor DeSantis, has already taken the lead on this. They have begun to divest from several of these companies that have social media networks that are discriminating on the basis of legal speech. There are a couple of other provisions in here where we prevent people from using subcontractors to get through this, eliminating basically eliminating the potential for subcontractor loopholes. So, maybe they're not going to hire a company that is on the forbidden list, but that contractor then, subs work out to one of those companies that is forbidden. We're also going to make sure that the public has an avenue for reporting cases where they've been discriminated against by somebody that has business with the state, so that can be resolved and that person is protected from vindictive acts from that company that might come after them for making such a report. We're going to make sure the state has the resources to go after enforcing this, not just within the state government, but within the counties and cities and towns. And finally, a speedy timeline to get this enacted. Obviously, if the state has significant contracts, significant work underway with one of these businesses, it can't happen overnight, but a timeline of about a year should give them time to find an alternative. One of two things is going to happen with these corporations after we get 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 states that become free speech states. Either they're going to decide to relent and permit legal speech on their platforms, or they're going to say, no, we're not going to allow that, which means those contracts will then go to new corporations that embrace the First Amendment, embrace your right to engage in legal political activity. And those government contracts can become the seed money to create a new ecosystem of social networks, technology companies, and financial institutions that embrace free speech and do not engage in blacklisting or deplatforming or censorship or employment discrimination based on your politics. So this is going back to where we have power and applying leverage. Now, you may not be familiar with Gandhi's rules of progress, but as we've heard it said many times before, first they ignore you, then they mock you, then they fight you, then you win. Right now we're at the ignore phase, but soon we'll start to get mockery and start to get some criticism from folks in the media saying this isn't really possible, it's not feasible, or people making ridiculous arguments about what if this, what if that. I've heard one individual making the remark, well, what about pornography? Well, as this goes through the state legislative process, and Ms. Dean will talk about that a lot more later, it'll go through hearings. It'll be given consideration. It'll be drawn into real legislation that accounts for so many different nuances. So if you want to bring up the pornography argument, well, there's the public square test. And that's the kind of speech that would be permitted, the public square test. Or you cannot in the public square shoot a pornography film, but you can hold up a sign saying learn to code, which is something you can't say on some of these social networks without getting censored. So it's going to be an arduous process, and you're going to face, as we gain traction, a lot of discouragement, a lot of criticism, but just withstand it and push through it and know that this is the right thing and now is the time for it. And it will be the same thing when we fight later for our voter integrity reforms, which I'm very excited to roll out. So with that, I'm going to hand the floor back to Ms. Dean. I hope you all have, do we still need, I don't think we need notebooks anymore because we've got a recording of this, but please take notes. This is very valuable information and we'll be putting it to use real soon.
Okay, give me just a moment to stop your video. Let me find my mouse first. There it is. Great.
Okay.
All right, we're just going to do a quick little camera adjustment here, since Matt is obviously much taller than I am. And then just set this. Everybody's saying, thank you, Matt. Thank you. Okay, now my mic is on. Thank you very much. I want to thank Cody and Matt from our studios team here at the Leadership Institute because they are helping me stay on track and keep on schedule tonight. And Matt Brainerd will be back shortly at the end of the night. We're going to take our questions through the Q&A platform at that time. So if you've got questions for me, if you've got questions for Matt, you put them up in the Q&A and we'll take them at the end tonight. I am going to be doing a little bit of an interactive presentation with my presentations. I do ask questions and have people write in their answers, and I will do my best to keep up with your answers. You can put the answers to the questions I ask into the chat room, I just ask that you don't turn the chat onto all panelists and attendees, just keep it on all panelists. So if you've already got it on all panelists attendees, move it back to all panelists, because every time that you chat, if somebody's watching on an iPad or on their phone, it pops up and covers over their screen. And there are now more than 1,000 people on tonight, and we don't want those people that are on phones and iPads to have their screens covered up all of the time. So let's do this. So right here, we've got a picture of somebody getting ready to testify in front of a legislative hearing. And there we go. Now I can change. The question they always start off with is state your name and your position for the minutes, and you have 2 minutes to speak. And so back when I was a lobbyist at the state legislature in South Dakota, it might go a little something like this. My name is Dina Espenscheid. I'm a lobbyist for the Alpha Center, and I'm here to ask you to vote yes on blah, blah, blah. And then I would give my story and give my testimony. And when the 2 minutes were up, the time would be up. Actually, let me restate that. I would start by looking at the chair, and I would go, Chair, may I speak? And he would say, yes. State your name and position for the record. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee here. My name is Dina Espenscheid. I am a lobbyist for the Alpha Center, and my position is this. And then I would go into the things. I'm seeing that people are writing in saying that they can't hear the audio because I'm breaking up. Okay, that's not, that looks like it's probably an internet problem and not anything else. So if nobody else is having that problem, and I'm only seeing it from one person so far, we're going to continue on with our presentation. So once you get up there, you have to get out what you want to say. You have to do it quickly to make sure that you get your point across. And I'm going to help you right now talk to and figure out how you're going to say what you're going to say to get these people to pay attention and take action. And as we go through this, I want you to prepare, because at the end there may be an opportunity for you to practice, or I'm just going to give you some homework. We'll see how the evening develops. So the first thing we need to do is to develop your message. Develop your message. One of the problems is that people don't remember. Look at this graph. This is 16 days after we speak. You're not going to remember what I had to say. And that's a little depressing as a public speaker to think that 16 days after I do a presentation, nobody remembers what I have to say. But what I hope that you remember the concepts that I said and not necessarily what I specifically had to say. Go back. There we go. So the question is, how do you make your message memorable? How do you make your message be remembered by your audience well into the future? And you do that by making them care. If they care about your message, if they care about the stories that you're sharing, they're going to remember your message. Case in point, from the 2016 National Convention, I remember one line. I probably watched every single moment of it. I was sitting on the edge of my seat, and I know that I paid attention and watched every moment of it. But the only line that I remember was when Donald Trump Jr. said something to the effect of, my dad raised children that are as comfortable in the front seat of a Bobcat as they are in the front seat of a Jaguar. I remember this line because it struck me. If I had gone into business with my dad, I would be as comfortable in the front seat of a Bobcat. Working in public plumbing, sometimes you get to drive around in Bobcats. They're like mini bulldozers. And I am absolutely comfortable in the front seat of a Jaguar. I thought, wow, I am like Donald Trump Jr. Donald Trump Jr. is like me. That means Donald Trump must be like my dad. We are alike. I really brought home this idea. I connected with that message, and it made it memorable to me. Why? Because Donald Trump Jr. made me care about him and his message in that little bit. The ways to make an audience care. First, we're going to build contrast. Then we're going to do sticky messages. We're going to tell stories, and we're going to talk about writing letters. And so tonight, let's talk about contrast first. One of the tools that we have to build contrast is called the Leesburg grid. This is called the Leesburg Grid. Leesburg is a city in Virginia. It's about 40 miles west of where I'm sitting right here in Arlington, Virginia. And it used to be way far out in the country. And there's a place called the Xerox Training Center out there in Leesburg. Leesburg is, as I said, it's a quiet town, or it was a quiet town. Now it's in the suburbs of DC. But way back in the 1980s, a bunch of conservative political consultants got together to figure out how can we better message our message. And they chose Leesburg because it was close to DC, but it was far enough away that they would be in a retreat setting. It's not the case now for those of you who know Leesburg. But they came up with this idea of this grid. And if anybody's ever done a SWOT analysis, they'll see that this is somewhat similar to a SWOT analysis. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The Leesburg grid does their grids. Grid number one is us on us, and then it's us on them on us, and them on them. And so I want you to, when you're building out your messaging for whatever issue that you're thinking about. So tonight we're going to do one on the First Amendment versus censorship, right? But if you were doing this for a political campaign, if you were doing this if you're in sales and you were trying to sell cars, you could build one of these Leesburg grids for just about anything to decide what is my best messaging? What is the best contrast that I can draw between myself and my position and my opponent in their positions? So first, we're going to talk about what are our best features? What are our best qualities? What do we want to say about us? And this is everything from it's mediocre to good, it's commonplace, like I have blue eyes. That might be one of my best features, right? All the way up to things that are amazing and different and things that really differentiate me. I've run a marathon. I ran a marathon last year. I didn't think I was a runner until I started, and then I didn't stop for 26.2 miles. So these are the things that you put down on the us on us grid. And then we're going to do the us on them grid. What are the worst things that we can say about our opponent? What are the moderately mediocre things that we can say about our opponent? And what's everything in between? And then we're going to have to put ourselves into the minds of our opposition. If you can't think like your opposition, you can't defeat your opposition. So I want you to start thinking about your opposition and what they might be saying about us. What are the negatives that they are going to point out about us and about our position? What are the worst things that they can say about us? And what are those moderately bad things that they can say about us? And then finally, them on them. What are the best things our opposition is going to say about themselves? Because if we can't decide what they are going to say about themselves, we can't figure out how to attack and counterattack and jujitsu them, use their strengths against them to make them weaknesses so that we can win the argument, win the day. So this is how you do a Leesburg grid. Now we're going to do 2 Leesburg grids tonight. The first one is going to be a throwback one. We're going to do Trump on Clinton. So the first thing I want you guys to think about right now is Trump on Trump. Put your mind back into 2016. What were the things that Donald Trump was saying about Donald Trump before he got elected as to why you should elect him? And again, as you type in the chat room here, look to make sure it says all panelists, not all panelists and attendees. Erin was first, she says successful. Roger was second. He's asking if anybody is from Indiana. Well, Mike Pence is from Indiana. That might have been a sales point in our Leesburg grid here. Businessman, an outsider. He's not a politician. He gets results. Drain the swamp. Political outsider. America first. Yes. What was his theme? Yvette says he was funny. Nanette says, oh my gosh, they're going through so fast I can't see them all. So we got Mega. He was a very strategic thinker. These are all excellent. He can't be bought. He knows how to make money. He fixes deals. He's a straight talker. These are all excellent. So let's take a look at the things that we've come across in the past. Things that past audience have come across with is successful outsider businessman, blue-collar billionaire. He's a parent to good kids. I've already mentioned that one. And then, of course, drain the swamp. So there you go. He's a diamond in the rough, somebody just said. Excellent. Now I want you to switch, stop chatting me about Trump. I want you to switch thoughts and tell me everything Donald Trump was saying about Hillary Clinton. Think about Hillary Clinton. Stephen, right off the bat, says corrupt. Brent says criminal, lock her up. Carrie says crook. Sarah says she's a liar. Lee said criminal. Ann says thief. Wayne said deplorables. Jill says belongs in jail. Karma said, oh, I missed yours. Sorry, it flipped from the page. Karen said she's a nasty woman. Amy says she's bought and paid for. Beth says she's an establishment and she's a politician. Benghazi came up. Please do watch your language though, people. This is a family show here, and your chats might be visible in the replay. No stamina, sick and lazy, bad negotiator, 30,000 emails. These are fabulous. That's exactly what my previous audiences have come up with. So we know what Trump was saying. He was saying things like she's an insider, she's a failed politician, she's crooked, she's a corrupt, she's a crony, she's unhealthy, she's sick. You remember on 9/11 when she actually passed out as she was getting into the van? And of course, she's the wife of the womanizer. Okay, now everyone stop on the Clinton stuff. Stop. Excellent. Okay, now I want you to think about what Clinton says about Donald Trump. What was Clinton saying about Donald Trump? Yes, Clinton said that Donald Trump is deplorable. His people were deplorables. He's unqualified. He has small hands. He's a misogynist. He's a racist. He goes bankrupt. He's a womanizer. He's a dictator. That was before he was a dictator. We're talking about 2016 here. He's xenophobic. Yes. He's just a TV personality. He's a bad businessman. He's a narcissist. He's unpolished. He's sexist. He has a bad temper. He's a tax cheat. Show us your taxes. He's not really rich. He's faking it. He's a flash in the pan. He's a Putin's puppet. He's got no political qualifications. He's unqualified. I can't read that one. Please, guys, keep them clean here. There we go. Yes, you don't want his hand on the nuclear. I'm going to use that one as my last one. You don't want his hand on the nuclear button. That was one of the commercials actually, was, do you really trust this man with the nuclear codes? He's dangerous. Good job, guys. Okay, stop on the Trump versus Clinton stuff. Let's see what we came up with in the past. Womanizer, no experience, unstable, mean, untrustworthy, unfair. Good job, guys. Stop on the Clinton on Trump. Now, I need you to put your thinking caps on. Remember back, what was Clinton saying about Clinton? She said, for the little guy. What else? I'm a woman. Yes, Brandon, I'm a woman was basically her whole entire campaign theme. She's experienced. She's for the people. She's the most qualified. She's a foreign policy expert. Laura says she's the perfect arbitrator of truth. Mary Jean says she needs to break the glass ceiling. Deborah said the same thing. So did John. We're going to continue on the Obama pathway to righteousness, or whatever else we put on. She's the former Secretary of State. It's her time. She deserves it. These are all excellent answers that you guys are coming up with. Thank you so very much. So the things we've come up with in the past are experienced and successful, caring. She's a woman, she's steady, she's a parent, she's a grandma, she's got a good kid, she's respected. She was the first lady. She was in charge of healthcare reform after all. Okay, you guys can stop chatting at me. Good. She was pro-choice. Excellent. These are all excellent things that you've brought up, excellent points that you've made, and these are all the things that we've said. And you guys did wonderful. I've been in front of crowds and in front of webinars before where I asked them to say positive things about Clinton, and they can't come up with anything. They just draw blanks. So now we've got all of these things laid out here on your screen, but some of them are the same. For instance, parent and grandma of good kid, she's got a good kid, and Donald Trump's I've got a good kid. Those are very similar. And so what we need to do now is in order to figure out our strengths and weaknesses, where we can draw the things that are alike and the things that are different, you start to cross them out or circle them if it's something that you want to focus on, or if it's something that is similar but you think you can use it against them. So for example, Trump said he was successful. She said she was successful. They kind of balance each other out. So the main purpose of our campaign, the main purpose of our messaging back in 2016 was not saying I'm successful, no, I'm successful, no, I'm more successful. Instead, they focused on other things. That came up, but it wasn't the primary focus. His primary focus was definitely an outsider and she was an insider. And her thing was, I'm experienced and he's not steady. This one here, this parents versus good kids, and her being a grandma and a good kid. So he immediately brought out the Trump kids. They had all graduated from college. The ones who had graduated from college, all graduated from college from prestigious university. They all got jobs, yes, within the Trump organization, but they had to work their way up to the positions that they were in. They were all working very hard, right? Well, when you compare that to Chelsea Clinton, Chelsea, yes, she graduated from college, but right after college, one of the news stations gave her a 6-figure salary to cut news stories and be an on-air reporter. I mean, did your kids ever get paid 6 figures, first job out of college, to report on human interest stories? I don't think so. And then when you looked at her subsequent jobs, she was working for the Clinton Foundation, which was embroiled in scandal. And so they really couldn't put Chelsea Clinton forward the same way that they could put the other kids forward, the Trump kids forward. And then you'll see the womanizer and the wife of the womanizer also circled, because we knew that womanizer was going to come up. There's no way the Trump campaign went into their messaging, went into the campaign and saying, they're not going to say he's a, there's no way they're going to ignore this. We didn't know where it was going to go necessarily, but they knew that it was going to come up at some point. So what did they do? The first opportunity that they had that they claimed he was a womanizer, they had some of Bill Clinton's victims sitting in the front row of the next debate just a few days later. So they were prepared and they had done all their groundwork to draw attention away from what Donald Trump had done in the past or said in the past and put the focus on the fact that Hillary Clinton had run the bimbo squad eruptions and had made sure that they were going to stop the women from speaking out. And so keep that in mind as you're doing this. So we're going to do one now with, let's flip to the next page. We're going to do one with, it's us on them, them on them, and them on us. Let me find my Word document here and draw it over. Ha, there it is. So I want you guys to think about doing one on the First Amendment on the First Amendment. Why do we want free speech? And I want you to start chatting in on why we want free speech. And I'm going to type in some of the best ones that I see pop up. Just keep in mind that there's over 1,000 of you on this webinar, and so they're going to fly by really fast. So if I don't see yours, I apologize. Okay, so type in, why do we like the First Amendment? Why do we want the First Amendment? Ideas. Okay, and let me know if you guys don't see this Word document, Leesburg grid, please let me know, because on my screen it says that I'm sharing this Word document, Leesburg grid. So natural right. Ability to communicate. And don't mind my typing is terrible. Great ideas. So we can make decisions, share truth. What else? Speak without punishment. Well, okay, does the First Amendment really mean that you can speak and say anything without fear of consequences? It's just our right to speak. It's not necessarily a right to speak without punishment. So that one about censorship breeds dictatorship, hold on to that for just a moment, because that's not a wide First Amendment. That's why we don't want the First Amendment. That's something we would say about our opposition. Preservation of freedom, that's a good one. Preservation of freedom. See, this one's a lot harder than the one on Clinton and Trump, isn't it? Essential for truth, brainstorming is good. What else have we got? Hone your points, value each other. Okay. Share thoughts, good job. Allows self-government. Healthy debate. Peaceably assemble. Right, creativity. Freedom for and preaching. These are all excellent. Sorry, freedom for of religion and preaching is another one. So like-minded people can organize and redress their grievances. Good job. Allows for organization and redress of, oh, I've lost it now. What was it? Redress of, goodness gracious. Our grievances, that's what it was. Grievances. Perfect. We're going to keep it to those ones. Okay. So up next on the next side, the First Amendment on censorship. So what would a First Amendment advocate say about censorship? So now flipping gears here, what do we First Amendment people say about censorship? It's akin to slavery. It promotes tyranny. Limits freedoms, limits, infringes on our rights. INFRINGES, on our rights. Okay, bad thought, rigid, bad thoughts, thought police, propaganda. It's arbitrary. Promotes corruption. Stifles truth. Who decides? Limits thoughts. Okay, that's a good one. We've got creates echo chambers. Okay, that's good. I'm going to call that a stop there because we've got more. Those are excellent. Hold on, let me correct my spelling. Not rigid, GID, rigid, and propaganda. Okay, now completely flip gears. Whoopsie, this should be censorship on the First Amendment. On first. Okay, so next we're going to do what would people who like the corporate censorship say about us, about people who like the First Amendment? What are they saying about us? What are the things that they're going to throw out at us? Hate speech. That's right. Domestic terrorist. Dangerous. Okay. Companies can do what they want. Well, okay, companies can do what they want. That actually belongs on them, the next box. So hold on to that one and come back to it. So I just saw not American pop up. So I'm going to put that down here. They're saying that free speech is not American because free speech not being American, it hurts people's feelings. They want safe spaces. Well, that would be safe spaces is them on them. They want control. Control would be them on them. Just saw something on psychological harm. Hold on, let me scroll up. Come on, let me see. Oh my gosh. Okay, I can't keep up. 5 new messages necessary. So prevent, yeah, stop. They're stopping conspiracies. Or they're saying that that First Amendment people are spreading conspiracies, right? They are saying it allows violence. They also say that words are violence. Stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Well, they flip that around and saying words do hurt, right? Okay, now let's go on to one that you guys are already doing, and you just, I don't think you realize it, but them on them. What are the positive things if you were somebody who wanted corporate speech censorship? What would you say are the positive things that your side is doing? So for instance, I saw safe spaces up there. We're just keeping the children safe. It's for the children, right? Safe spaces. Whoopsie, hold on. Let's highlight that and get this to not. There we go. What else? What else are the positive things that they think they're doing? Necessary to protect democracy. Democracy. Good job. What else? Oh, 437 new messages. Okay. You guys are typing in quickly. Let me get, come on. Come on, chat room. Give me options to see what everybody is chatting. The chat is not responding. The chat is not responding. We've crashed the chat. So some other things that you guys were saying is it prevents terrorism. It's the corporate overlords. I'm kidding, guys. I'm kidding. The chat apparently crashed the system. So we're not going to, I'm going to just call an end to our chat a little bit there. Let me get this reset up the way I want it. And let me share my screen. Sounds like I can hear myself. That's good. Share screen, hold on. So great job. We are, it's not Zoom that can't handle it. It's my poor little computer can't handle it. So, but you guys did so good on sharing that information. So then here we go. Yes, you passed the test. Let me get this. Question is, did I pass the test? Okay. And share computer sound. I'm not going to try to load the chat into this computer anymore. I'm going to use this little iPad that they've given me for chatting. So you should be able to see me. You should be able to hear me. And let me just thank you guys. You are wonderful. So we've got so many options here. Thank you guys so very much. You're amazing. Look at all of the information that we got in there. So then basically we take a look at this and we see where the differences are and where the similarities are. So for instance, up here we said this is a natural right, right? So I'm going to highlight that one in yellow. But down here, they were saying, well, it's our right. One of the things that we were saying, them on them, it's private business has a right to control their platform. So that's kind of a similar message. So we want to think about ways to, how do we talk about that? How do we defend against that? There's another one, necessary to protect democracy. And then up here, I think we had, somebody had said it, even if I didn't type it in, it was necessary to protect democracy. Free speech is necessary to protect democracy. Both sides are saying that. And can you see how if both sides are using the same argument, it's not a good argument to make? You need to find ways to differentiate your argument from the arguments that are being made by your opponents. So again, go ahead and put any questions that you have in the Q&A. We're going to get to those later. And I'm going to move on from this Leesburg grid here and talk about staying, whoops, hold on, cancel that for just a moment. One other thing I want to talk about. So we've got this line here. These two boxes, everything above the line, the two boxes that I've got highlighted right now, those are your message. That is what you want to be saying and what you want to be talking about. When you're using words like hate speech and domestic terrorism and the rest, when you're below the line, you're on their messaging. So if you're responding to this stuff that's highlighted right now, if you're trying to say, I am not a domestic terrorist, or it is not hate speech, or it's not a conspiracy, then you're using their words, you're making their argument for them. So I want you to stay above the line. And to show you that, save this, hold on, let's do cancel and minimize this, because I'm going to share that with you, and you can download that Leesburg grid from your My LI account. But here is a little video. This is on an issue that's close to my heart. It's the pro-life issue. It's what I used to lobby on. You don't have to be pro-life to get the message of this video. I just want you to think, if Marco Rubio had done a Leesburg grid, what was above the line based on this video? So think about what is above his line and whether or not he stays on message.
On the one hand is the right of a woman to choose what to do with her body, which is a real right. And on the other hand is the right of an unborn human child to live. And they're in conflict, and as a policymaker, I must choose which one of these two sides takes precedence. And I've chosen to err on the side of life. Here's what I find outrageous. There has been 5 Democratic debates. The media has not asked them a single question on abortion. And on abortion, the Democrats are extremists. Why does...
Whoop. I did that, sorry, I clicked on something. And now Microsoft PowerPoint is restarting. Okay, we are just having a grand old time with this tonight. So let's go ahead and get the restarted. But you can see, he immediately said, he did a block and pivot. He said, you can say that my position is radical, but really, what I find radical is the position that you're in, that you are promoting, which is the Democrats are extremists, and you've not asked them a single question on this issue over 5 debates. And then he goes on to explain why he thinks their position is extremists. So now I want you to think, if you were asked, whoops, hold on, display settings, swap presenter view, there we go. If you were asked during a legislative testimony, private companies should be able to determine with whom they do business. Do you disagree? How might you respond to that? And you could say something to the effect of, and Matt already did it for us tonight, well, on one hand is the right for private businesses to decide with whom to do business, but on the other hand is the fact that this private business is no longer a private business. They've entered into a public partnership with our tax dollars. And because of that, they cannot infringe on the First Amendment rights. Because one thing I know is that the most important right is the First Amendment right, which is why it is listed first. And that is our right to free speech, our right to free expression of religion, our right to assemble, our right to address the government and our grievances. It's the freedom of the press. And if these rights are infringed on, none of the rest of the rights matter. And see what I did there? I blocked and I pivoted my message to get it back on what we want. And so it made the point, but I stayed above the line. So instead of talking about whether or not a business should be allowed to limit or choose with whom to do business, I stayed above the line and I talked about the things that I want to talk about, which is our First Amendment right being sacrosanct and sacred, and it should not be infringed upon by anybody doing business with the government. Does that make sense? Good. I'm going to pretend like I saw you all nod your head yes. Let us move on to talk about the next step. So that was building contrast and staying on message. Now we're going to talk about how to make your message stick, how to make your message be memorable in their minds. And one of the great things is that the research has been done on this, okay? The research has been done on this. There was actually a group in Japan, a group of researchers in Japan did research on they had people sit down and watch 600 different commercials and then had people answer questions about those commercials. Now, if you can imagine watching the Super Bowl several times over, that's what this research must have been like. And they found that the commercials that were most memorable to the people in the audience had these things in common. They were simple, they were unexpected, they were concrete, they were credible, and they were emotional. Simple, unexpected, concrete, credible, and emotional. And so I'm going to go through each one of these. I'm going to show you a video, and then we're going to go through each one of these to see how this might be used in like a political campaign. And then I want you to be thinking about how do you make your message about the First Amendment simple, unexpected, concrete, credible, and emotional. Or if you're going to go up to talk about homeschooling or anything else at the state capitol, what stories, what messages can you give? What examples can you give that are simple, unexpected, concrete, credible, and emotional? So here comes our little video here.
We've got room to put 2,700 people in our jail, and it costs us about $103 a day.
Gerald really doesn't have any hobbies.
Last year's tax rate was 0.4169. This year, we could take that down to 3.838.
So is he always like that?
Yeah, all the time.
Which means that the 3.838 is probably going to go somewhere between 3.838 and 41.69.
Most people leave their work at the office.
We got 3 light rail cars. You can put 60 people on each car.
So even if you add 2 cars,
You're talking about maybe 300 people that are affected. There are 1 million people in this community. I mean, that is 0.01 to the 8th power. If you round it off, it's 0.
All he wants to do is fix things.
so I got this 18-wheeler that's parked in this neighborhood, spewing fumes all over the place, but quite frankly, it's not a code violation.
You know, I think I like helping around the house here.
Please re-elect Gerald. Please.
She is funny, it's unexpected, but most of all, it's a simple message. And I want you to think about getting to the core of your idea. What is the simplest way that you can say your message? What is the simplest way that you can state your goal? And the fewer words and the simplest way you can do it is usually better. So think about it. The Bill Clinton for President campaign had 3 themes. One of them, the one actually that James Carville hated the most and thought was the least effective, was, "It's the economy, stupid." Can anybody name for me the other 2 themes that they ran on back in 1992? Think about it. So somebody just wrote in the simple idea, "Hate this, try North Korea." That is definitely a simple way of talking about government or the censorship that we're experiencing today. So if I said it's the low-cost airline, many of you at home are saying it's Southwest. Why? Because Southwest has made its core philosophy it's the low-cost airline, and everything they do is about saving costs and cutting costs. And that's what they're known for. A bird in the hand is worth, in your minds, you probably just said two in the bush. So it is, you were figuring that out. That's an Aesop's fable. It's been around for 3,000 years just to show how simple things stick in your head. And of course, in this commercial, the tagline was, please reelect Gerald, please. And that's the simple piece that they're getting out to. They didn't have Gerald, I mean, everything that Gerald was saying was all about how boring he is and how he focuses on the statistics and the facts and all this other stuff, but that's not what they sold you on. It wasn't on Gerald is smart and he knows more about this community than anybody else. It is Gerald knows more about this community, so much so his wife wants him out of the house. Please reelect Gerald. The next one is unexpected. You were not expecting a message from a wife saying to get her husband out of the house, right? It's just not done. So any way that you can present your ideas in a way that is unexpected is going to be more memorable than if you just sit down and you talk about your piece of legislation or why you're appearing at the legislature. So one way to do something unexpected is by doing the gap theory, or it's like verbal clickbait. So in the next few slides, I am going to show you the secret to perfecting your message. But first, I'm going to talk about something else. Now, if you're paying attention to me and you're listening, you're going to be paying even closer attention because you want to know what is the secret to perfecting my message. And you're going to be looking for that secret to perfecting your message. It's verbal clickbait. I just got your mind to tune into what I'm saying by telling you I'm about to tell you something that you don't know, but first you got to wait for it because it's going to be whatever. And your brain is trying to fill in those mysteries. You can also present your message as a mystery. How is it that 20 million people lost their voice last week? What happened that made 20 million people suddenly go silent? I'm going to talk to you about that. And then you present your message as a mystery. Here's how this happened. Here's what happened. Here's what led up to it. And here's why. You can also do something unconventional. So when I was a lobbyist up in South Dakota, we had a bill that had to do with sex education in the schools, relationship and sex education in the schools. And our opposition wanted to put in a specific piece of, they wanted to put in a specific curriculum. And one of the parents that I know well, he brought it to us and said, look what they're trying to put into my fourth grade classroom, my daughter's fourth grade classroom. And he showed us pages 18, 19, 20, and 21. And he said, this is terrible. This is pornographic. We read it. We were like, this is pornographic. So during legislative testimony, when they had this bill, the other side had this bill to mandate that all public schools teach fourth graders from this specific book, they were asked, what do you do about pages 18, 19, 20, and 21? They said, well, we just tell the teachers tell the students not to look at those pages. Well, there was giggles in the classroom because if you were a fourth grade boy and you were told not to look at pages 18, 19, 20, and 21, what's the first thing you turn to? So then when it came to our time, we had our churchiest church lady dressed in our churchiest church outfit, and she sat down very prim and proper, and she opened up the book to pages 18, 19, 20, and 21, and she started reading. And she read exactly what was in pages 18, 19, 20, and 21. And you don't expect a churchy church lady to go up in front of the legislature and start reading pornography. But she did it. Why? Because if this is allowed in my classroom, it should be allowed here. And the takeaway was we should not be allowing pornography to be read in the legislature, and therefore we're not going to allow pornography to be read out loud in our classrooms. It was unexpected, it was memorable, and it worked. We were able to kill the bill because of that. The next thing I want you to think about is how to make your message concrete. So I just gave you an example of concrete. I talked about the churchiest church lady in her churchiest church clothes. Now, you may not be able to reach out and touch a churchy church lady, but you kind of had an idea in your head. You might have had, the hair pulled back and the bun and the churchiest church clothes, something prim and proper, maybe a long skirt. These are the details that made the story come alive. It anchored what I was saying in your mind and made it more believable. In our video there, it's the pieces of steak being lined up like cars. And you can see that steak is so overcooked. I would not want to eat that steak. And he's cut it off into these big slices that look like cars and he's playing with them. You could taste the steak, you could chew the steak, you could feel that, and that makes that commercial very memorable. Just like my church mom story became very memorable. This details that you share in your stories, they are like Velcro, they are hook and loop. So Velcro is a bunch of little hooks with a bunch of little loops, and your brain is a bunch of little loops, and then the stories that you tell and the details that you put into those stories are hooks, just hooking onto your brain and anchoring that story there for you to remember it years to come. Also, the details will increase emotional response and help make your point. So, for example, in the book, the sticking point, or the Made to Stick book, they tell the story of some research that was done with fake juries, where it was a case of whether or not a child was being neglected. And in one case, they said the mother made her son brush his teeth every night. And in the other case, they said the mother made her son brush his teeth every night with a Darth Vader toothbrush. That one little change, talking about the Darth Vader toothbrush, swayed juries to side with the mother more often than not. Why? Because the Darth Vader toothbrush, memorable piece, and it showed that the mother cared enough about her son to give him a toothbrush that was fun and encourage him to brush his teeth. So it's not just that he had to brush his teeth, but with the Darth Vader toothbrush, they empathized more with the mother after that one little detail. So I want you to find details as you're writing stories about how infringement on the First Amendment has impacted you personally. Find details that you can add to your story to make it credible, make it more credible. Your story should already be credible because it's the truth, but to make it more credible and to bring that emotional appeal into it. And I know we're conservatives and we hate talking about emotions, but guess what works when you're persuading somebody? It's the emotion stuff. But first, we're going to talk about credibility. Are you believable? Are you believable as you present your message? There's the internal credibility, which is your bio. I started off here tonight by talking about who I was and the fact that I've been a lobbyist and I've been doing this for 20 some odd years. There's third-party credibility. I might say that Matt Brainen and I worked together on the Donald Trump campaign. He's absolutely brilliant when it comes to data and IT and figuring all that stuff out. He was my main contact with the Trump campaign's data team. There's anti-authority. Anti-authority would be if at the end of tonight, I'm going to send a survey to you all, and I'm going to ask you to fill out the survey. If you write back something about, this was a great presentation, I really enjoyed what Dina had to say, and then I use that later in like a brochure, that would be an anti-authority. You're not an authority on me, you're not an authority on the Leadership Institute, but you're telling people that as one of my clients, you enjoyed what I had to say tonight. There's the testable credentials. Are you better off now than what you were 4 years ago? Are you better off without free speech than you were with free speech? And hopefully you've already led them to the answer of, no, you're not better off. Don't ask the question unless you know what their answer is going to be. So lead them to that answer. And then the last way to build credibility is statistics, but there's a star behind statistics. And the star behind statistics is because statistics are a double-edged sword. And we're going to talk about why not to use statistics just a little bit later tonight. There you go, more verbal clickbait for you. Then the last one with the sticky is emotional. I want you to find ways to share emotions and put emotions into the presentations that you're going to be making for the state legislatures. In this picture here, you can see his emotion was pretty much boredom. And then you've got the exasperation from the wife and a little bit of humor in that story. But there is some emotion in this story, in this presentation that is being given to help you get the message across, to help it stick in your brain. Find ways to be emotional. I know we're conservatives, so we hate sharing emotion, but it works. Next up, this was any questions on building contrast or sticky. And remember, please, please, please don't send your questions to all panelists and attendees, just send it to all panelists. The last screen was for a presentation I did previous. It had to do with a different issue that people were lobbying. I just forgot to clear it out. Okay, so I'm not seeing any questions on contrast or sticky come through. So let's keep on moving forward, because now we're going to start talking about how to prepare your testimony, because you do really have a very limited time, 2 minutes or 5 minutes in which to get your message across. So you're going to have to prepare this ahead of time. You're not just going to be able to wake up one day and go, I think I'm going to go talk to the state legislature, and go up there and give a presentation, because you will run out of time. At the end of this, I'm going to show you some examples of people testifying, and lo and behold, they ran out of time. Because even when you prepare for your time, it goes by so very fast. With your testimony, with your grassroots lobbying, what you're trying to do is move your legislators up the chain. Some of them are going to start as apathetic. And frankly, there's not a lot that you can do with apathetic. If they just don't care, if they don't care enough to like you and they don't care enough to hate you, there's not a lot of movement there that you can get out of them. Then there's non-compliance, compliance, enrollment, and finally commitment. So non-compliance would be people who are like, absolutely not. I think it's a great thing what big tech is doing. I am never going to side with you on your issue. Don't write those people off, because public policy changes all the time. People need to be reelected all the time. So therefore, their positions in public policy change all the time. At least they know about your issue. They understand your issue. They might have a bad understanding of it, but you're going to keep working with them and educating them politely to hopefully change their opinions on your position, or to get them to move in your direction. Compliant would be like, oh yeah, of course I like the First Amendment. Of course I side with you. That's fine. Enrollment would be the legislators who are like, absolutely, this is wrong. We need to do something about this. And the commitment is absolutely, I'm going to champion your bill. Let's get started. Let's get writing the piece of legislation. Let's go do this. I'm going to speak from the floor. We're going to do it all. Let's make this happen, right? So this is what we're trying to move people up from. You can't do much with apathy, but we can get everybody else to start moving in our direction. So we want to get them to that shared vision place where we say, we're going to pass these laws to make this change because it's going to improve our state governance, and make our country better. So how do we get them to shared vision? We make them care. I want you to think about for just a moment. These are 3 statements that I wrote for another group, but it's based on a story and some statistics. And I want you to think about which one of these makes you care more about this issue. I specifically did not change out this issue into something that you might care about, because I'm hoping that you're in that above apathetic, but that non-compliance, compliance range where you haven't really thought much about this issue. So I want to find out from you which one of these makes you care. The issue is called equal shared parenting. The idea that biological mothers and biological fathers should be able to share parenting instead of it being primary parenting for one or the other. So the first slide says, adults who grew up without both parents in their homes, in their lives, adults who grew up without both parents in their lives are 75% more likely to have a child out of wedlock. This is why we need equal shared parenting. So that is just a statistic. Anybody feel any movement for that? The next one is hundreds of children in our state each year are moved more than 100 miles from their non-custodial parent. This makes them more likely to experience negative life outcomes like future out of wedlock pregnancy. This is why we need equal shared parenting. So again, this is the story of many hundreds, and it's okay. Then we've got this. I love my daughter Sarah, and my career allowed me to be a custodial parent. But 15 years ago, the judge was a traditionalist and gave full custody to her mom. I was left with just 2 weekends a month. When my ex remarried, she moved my daughter across the state and petitioned the judge to limit my custody even more, saying that it was a burden on her and Sarah to drive 2 hours, the halfway point for my weekends. I was limited to just 1 month over the summer. The impact on Sarah was obvious. She grew hostile towards me and her grades suffered. I'm a grandparent now because she made bad relationship choices since I was excluded from her life. She's a single mother with a GED and without a full-time job. The baby's father is not in the picture and is not even giving her child support. Equal shared parenting would have forced the judge to allow me to stay active in Sarah's life. Children like Sarah are why we need equal shared parenting. So again, completely different topic from what this presentation is on, but on purpose. Which one of those moved you more towards supporting equal shared parenting? If it did. So Erin says the third one with the story is the best. Teresa, good, fantastic. I'm glad you had good life outcomes. Young Hee Anderson says the third one. And Susan says the letter, the third one. That's right. Nobody is writing in the first one or the second one. You guys all like the third one the best. The problem with the first one is that it's statistic. And I said, statistics were a way to build credibility, but I told you there's a star behind statistics. The problem with statistics is that analytical thinking diminishes emotional response. So analytical thinking diminishes emotional response. If you're trying to get people's emotions up so that they agree with you and they are passionate about your issue, and then you pull out statistics, suddenly they're back down to, this is an emotional issue. I'm just analytically thinking. I'm not being emotional. Statistics are not caring, and you can't really empathize with a statistic. So the problem with number one is that statistics they educate people, but they don't push people into action. Whoopsie, that was the wrong way. Go this way. The second one, the general testimony, is not personal. The problem could be seen too big to tackle. Sorry, my throat was drying out. The problem seems too big to tackle, so why should I even start? They've done research where they send people $1 and they say, send this $1 back to help feed the hungry. And when they do it with a story about 10,000 people starving in Africa, 10,000 children starving in Africa, they say, send this $1 back along with your donation to help 10,000 children starving in Africa. They get something like $1.25 on average back, which is fine. But when they tell the story of one child, send this $1 back to help feed Maria. She is a starving child in Africa. They get like $2.65 back. It's huge, the amount of difference that you make when you tell the story of just one person. And the reason is that the story of just one person is personal, it's emotional, and it's easier to connect with it. A good story will trigger the release of oxytocin. If you've never heard of oxytocin, you should look into it. Oxytocin is the bonding hormone. Oxytocin is released during, we'll call it the wedding night, and it's released during labor and delivery. And it is this emotional connection that you feel with the people that you were with at that time. This, I care for you, I will die for you, I will do anything to help you feeling. Now with a good story, you're only talking about itty bitty bits of oxytocin, right? But that caring is there, and it's completely hormonal, and it's in your brain, and it's from that oxytocin. Oxytocin creates empathy, which leads to action. Oxytocin release leads to empathy, leads to action. One of the smartest things that the George W. Bush administration did was when the reporters said, we want to go cover the people, the troops in the field, they embedded the reporters in with the troops and had them live among the troops and eat with the troops. So the troops were telling stories, they were sharing stories, and also they were eating together. When you eat protein, you release oxytocin. You feel connected to the people that you have food with. And so the reporters came back and they would not write negative stories about the troops that they were embedded with. And you're going to be doing the same thing. As you go about lobbying, you're going to be telling stories, and those stories create that oxytocin in those legislators, which creates empathy, which then leads them to take action. So I want you to be telling stories as much as possible. A good story will have either T, L, or C. It will make you think, it will make you laugh, or it'll make you cry. A great story will have all three, and it will lead to some sort of action. So in our case, if we can tell a great story about our First Amendment rights being infringed upon, hopefully it will lead the legislators to take action and pass laws that will stop the infringement on our First Amendment rights. Okay, so how do you tell a great story? Because shockingly, we don't know how to tell great stories. It is crazy. We are like spaghetti when we tell stories, and they're all over the place. And instead, I'm going to show you an outline that will help guide your story, create your story so that you stay on topic and stay on target. So a great story. This is a great story here. Anybody recognize that guy? That guy is Luke Skywalker. A great story will have a hero. Who is the hero of your story? That's what you need to decide. So in our story, it's going to be Luke Skywalker. And then Luke Skywalker has a challenge. Let's play this little video and find out what his challenge is.
I have placed information vital to the survival of the rebellion into the memory systems of the SAR-2 unit. My father will know how to retrieve it. You must see this droid safely delivered to him on Alderaan. This is our most desperate hour. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
Yes, okay, so there is a challenge that's issued. You must get this droid to my father, and he'll know how to get the plans for the Death Star off of this android, right? So that you guys can blow it up and defeat it. That is our challenge. A story will have a mentor or a leader. Here, Obi-Wan Kenobi becomes Luke's mentor. He's going to show him the way of the Force and help him get to Alderaan to deliver the plans to her father. And then there's going to be a choice. In every great story, there's going to be a choice. Do I go on this path or do I go on that path? Here is the choice that Luke is facing.
You must learn the ways of the Force if you're to come with me to Alderaan.
Alderaan? I'm not going to Alderaan. I've got to get home. It's late. I'm in port as it is.
I need your help, Luke. She needs your help. I'm getting too old for this sort of thing.
I can't get involved. I've got work to do. It's not that I like the Empire. I hate it, but there's nothing I can do about it right now.
How often have we said that in our own lives, or have we heard that from our volunteers and our activists? I can't get involved. I've got too much work to do. It's not that I like the empire. I hate it, but I can't get involved right now. Luke faces a choice, just like we all face a choice. Those words are like the truest words ever in movie magic history, right? And so he faces this choice, and this story goes about how he makes the choice, right? And then he makes a choice, and by the way, spoiler alert, because every choice follows through all the way to the outcome. We're going to speed this up. The outcome is they get the plans to the rebels, and they're able to blow up the Death Star. They save the universe. They save the rebellion. Yay! Sorry for spoiling a movie that is over 40 years old, guys. If you haven't seen it yet, not my fault. Okay, so then you're going to have to give an outcome to your story. So your story outline is going to look like this. There's a hero, there's a challenge, there's a mentor, there's a choice, there's an outcome, there's an ask. The ask we have not talked about yet, but if I were putting together brief legislative testimony on this, and I'm doing this right off the top of my head, it might sound something like this. I was building up my organization. I had a new organization that I started, and we had a Facebook page and a Facebook following, and I was using that Facebook page to fundraise for my cause. And Facebook decided that my cause, because it was conservative, was not PC enough for them, was not in line with the thought police. And so we had to have a challenge. We had to figure out what were we going to do in order to get around this, because Facebook stopped us from advertising. And when we couldn't advertise, we weren't able to get our stories out there, and we weren't able to fundraise for the children whom we were fundraising for. So that's when I reached out to Matt Brainerd from Look Ahead America, and he made some suggestions on how we can change some laws in the state, because I found out that that organization is tax funded, and therefore we need to change the law to make sure that tax funded entities aren't limiting our free speech rights. And so the choice that I had today was to come here and talk about this and speak out, even though it means probably more persecution and prosecution for me on these issues. But I'm hoping that the outcome is a yes vote on this piece of legislation. So I'm asking you to vote yes on our bill. That right there may be a very simplified, narrowed down bit of testimony about why you're coming forward to speak on this issue, with my mentor there, in this case being Matt Brainerd from Look Ahead America. Your story may be about how you were speaking out on election issues, or you were speaking out for gun rights, or you were speaking out for one of my coworkers here used to be a member of Antifa. He's got a book about what it was like when he was a member of Antifa. And now he goes on to college campuses and helps kids promote conservative ideas and the First Amendment, and in a peaceful way fight back against the violence, right? He has been limited and silenced on Facebook, on his personal page. He can't sell his book anymore about how Antifa is organized to destroy college campuses, and how he used to be part of that before he came to the light and became conservative. And so his story, if he was going to go testify, would be about how he is being limited, how he is being stifled, how his book is no longer being sold, all because it disagrees with the thought police that are out there, and how we need to do something about this, because these organizations that are censoring free speech should not be tax funded. So that's your example. That's an example there. And then you make the ask at the end. The ask at the end is going to depend on where you're at. So if you're having a one-on-one presentation with the legislator, your ask may be, will you sponsor my bill? Or if you're giving testimony, it's, I need you to vote yes or no on this piece of legislation. So your ask changes according to what you're doing. When you can get the audience to see your point of view and put themselves in your shoes, you make real lasting change. This is something that the left is excellent at doing, that conservatives are less so. But they've done studies, and they've done this study multiple times, and every single time it comes with the same results. They will go door to door in conservative neighborhoods, knocking on the doors of conservatives who gave to conservative causes, and tell their story. This research has mostly been done using either people who are transsexual or gay, and they go to houses and households that funded things like Proposition 8 in California, which was the anti-gay marriage bill. And they go and they knock on those doors, they talk to those voters about what it was like to come out of the closet, or what it's like to be transsexual. And then they ask at the end, what would you do differently if you were me? And they make the conservative person repeat back, here's what I would do differently, or I wouldn't do anything differently. I hadn't thought about it like that. And in the end, what they found is that immediately afterwards, the conservative is more likely to take a liberal view on this. 6 weeks afterwards, the conservative is more likely to take a liberal view on this. 6 months afterwards, the conservative is more likely to take a liberal view on this. 36 months later, the conservative is still more likely to take a liberal view on those issues. That's how powerful it is to share your story and then ask somebody to put themselves into your shoes. What would you do differently? So as a conservative, on conservative issues, whether it is free speech or gun rights or pro-life, I want you to be thinking, how can I tell my story? And then ask my audience, what would you do differently? How would you change my story? What do you think I should do next? And have them put themselves into your shoes, because that is going to make long-lasting change towards the conservative point of view. And how powerful would that be if we can get people to start coming back to conservative viewpoints just by telling our stories and then asking questions afterwards. So when you're telling stories, the most important skill is message discipline. You need to decide in advance what is one thing your listener must walk away with. I want you to draft no more than 3 points of view, supporting points. Formulate your story around those 3 points and that one piece that you want them to walk away with. I know I said your sticky story should have some details, some concrete details in it, but just enough to make the story credible and believable. I don't want you to get bogged down in all the details. And then don't get dragged off topic. Stay on topic and keep the story moving forward towards its end, where you ask the audience either to take action, vote yes or no, or to think about what you've had to say. What would you do differently if you were me? Okay? So that is how we tell a great story for legislative testimony. Any questions on any of that? And yes, you need to write your stories down in advance, and you need to practice them in advance, because your story is always going to go longer when you're sitting in front of people and sitting in front of an audience. The other night, I got to tell the story of when I gave the toast at my sister's wedding. I had practiced my toast out, so it was 4 minutes and 30 seconds. When I gave it in person, it was more than 7 minutes long. Nerves will take over. There will be interruptions. You will hem and haw. You need to practice your stories so that they stick on time. Because when you're doing grassroots lobbying, you have a very limited amount of time, and you don't want to get dragged off of message. And always remember that block and pivot that Senator Rubio did with the, well, on one hand, there's this right, and on the other hand, that's right, and I'm always going to err on this side, but let's talk about what's different. Way back when I was a lobbyist, one day I was sitting down, and myself and my lobby partner were sitting down with a legislative assistant. The legislative assistant, we were talking about trade, and frankly, it was the shrimp farming practices that they have over in Asia is what we were talking about. And the person with whom we were speaking just did a throwaway line about Monsanto. And suddenly my trade partner, my partner in trade, my partner who was lobbying with me, was off and talking about GMOs and Monsanto and everything else. And I was like, how did we lose control of this meeting? And how did you let yourself get pulled off topic? Our topic was trade, not the GMOs, not all this other stuff. We should have stuck with trade. And instead we ended up talking about all this stuff that had nothing to do with our issue. We had 15 minutes with this woman, and 14 and a half of it was spent talking about not our issue. I don't want you all to make the same mistakes. So I want you to prepare for your meetings, because when you're going grassroots lobbying, you're going to have a certain amount of time with which to talk with the legislators and with which to tell your stories and with which to get your point across. Now, I know we've just talked a whole lot about stories, and you're like, but Dina, I have amazing statistics. You don't understand. There's so many great statistics that stand up and support what I have to say. That's fantastic. You know where you put your statistics? You put your statistics on a handout. And you prepare that handout and you have it printed ahead of time so that you can pass it out to everybody. And that way you don't have to read the statistics to them, because when you read statistics, eyes glaze over and people stop paying attention and they stop empathizing with you. And if they're not empathizing with you, they're not moving to action for you. So instead, I want you to put your statistics onto a handout. This handout here is about diet beverages and whether or not to tax them. I like this particular handout. I search and search and search for one that I like, and I like this one because it's simple. Remember our sticky principle, simple. It's easy to read. It's bullet points. Here at the Leadership Institute, we've got a rule that no paragraph is allowed to be more than 5 lines long. You can see the longest paragraph here is this summary, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines long. No more. If you go on for paragraphs that are lines and lines and lines long, nobody reads it. It's too much for the eye to take in, too much for the mind to take in. I'm sorry to tell you that. I know there are some writers out there who love to write, and they write with eloquence, and it's wonderful. Nobody reads it. So I want you to simplify your messages, right? Bullet points are fantastic. Graphics are fantastic. Be positive, but be honest. Be understandable. I want you to write it at no more than an 8th grade level. I know college dissertations are amazing, and you guys are some of the smartest audiences that we have here at the Leadership Institute. But the people you're speaking to don't have the bandwidth in most cases to read and understand your college dissertation. I want you to talk horizontally, not down. And what this means is that I want you to act as if the people to whom you're talking to at the state legislature are at the same level of knowledge as you are. So I don't want you talking to them like they're kindergartners. Understand that they understand First Amendment. You don't have to explain what the First Amendment is. Understand that they know what free speech is, what Facebook is. They understand all of this stuff. They've been working with it also. So talk at the same level as them. And also no acronyms. At least for the very first time, you need to spell out everything. So instead of saying LI, like our logo here, we say Leadership Institute. Leadership Institute, Leadership Institute. And then after a few times, then we'll put it in parentheses, and then we'll start using LI. But even if you think they know what the NRA is, the first time you put it out there, you write out National Rifle Association, because somebody might think it's the National Religious Association. Maybe that's who they've been working with on other things, and that's where their brain goes. So the first time you use it, I want you to write out what the acronym is. You should be journalistic. So in other words, I want you to tell the facts and the stories in there and focus on the who, what, when, where, and why. Okay. Up next, whoopsie, sorry, that went backwards. Here we go. So again, I like this one because it's got that summary on top, and then it goes into the bullet points. The headers are a different color than the rest of the paper. It's printed in 4 color, and it's very easy to understand what this piece is about. You can leave this sitting on any chair in the state legislature, and anybody is going to pick it up, and they're going to know exactly what your position is on this particular issue. I want you to know and do research ahead of time of who your state legislators are, and you need to know who they are, where you vote, and where you work. Those are the 2 most important legislators that you're going to be working with, the one where you work and the one where you vote. I was on the phone the other day with somebody, and he said, well, I'm going into a school board meeting, and they keep telling me that my opinion doesn't matter because I don't have kids in that district, and I don't have property in that district, and I don't have a business in that district. And I'm like, and they're right, because there's nothing you can do that impacts them. But if you vote for that person, they represent you, and they're more likely to listen to you. And if you work in that district, you may not vote for them, but you have influence with the other business owners. You pay property taxes on your business. So these are the 2 most important legislators for you personally in the state legislature, the one where you vote and the one where you work. They are always more responsive when they're dealing with constituents. This is why we need to make big coalitions, and hopefully in future Look Ahead America and Leadership Institute Grassroots lobby trainings, we're going to talk about building coalitions. And when we talk about those coalitions, one of the things I want you to find is not only coalition partners, but also other people with whom to work. And I've been watching on here, especially in Indiana, he's probably going to share it again, but I see there's one up on Texas right now saying, hey, if you're from Texas, email me here. And the Indiana guy keeps putting any Hoosiers out there, email me here. You guys are already starting to build out your coalitions. Please don't fill the chat room with email me at this place. We'll get you guys ways to communicate with each other later. But if you can, if you're going up to the state legislature, I want you to have either people with you from the different legislative groups, or I want you to have letters from different state legislative districts, from people that live in those districts. That way, even if you're not from District 99, if you could pull out a letter from District 99 and say, this person couldn't be here today, but here's a letter that they wrote to you. Thank you for taking this meeting. That's going to be more impactful than if you just walk into District 99 and start talking, right? Also, we never just walk in and start talking. We have appointments. If you just walk in and start talking, they're like, why are you here? What are you doing? You make appointments ahead of time and you show up on time for your appointments. So this group is probably a fly-in group or a drive-in group in this case. You can see they are all dressed well. It's definitely a winter meeting because they're all in sweaters. They've left their jackets somewhere for the most part, so they're not carrying around bulky items. Everybody's got a name tag. It's fantastic. And they did the smart thing, and they are getting pictures in every office where they're at so that they can post them out on their different resources and advertise the fact that they were out there doing things and talking with legislators. So I don't know what their issue is, but they were there and they made their presence known, and there's quite a big group there. So I want you to think about how to manage the citizen lobbyists that you're going with. And in order to manage our citizen lobbyists, we don't want them just running around all over the place, all over the state legislature, all over the state house. You need to keep them in groups. You need to keep people together in small groups, manageable groups, and there should be a leader that is going to be heading up the meetings, and then people who are just there to share their stories, right? This is another fly-in. By the way, I never, ever, ever want to see you all take pictures like this. This sorority squad is not a good look on anybody. I want you dressed professionally when you go up to these state legislators. So preferably no t-shirts. I want to see gentlemen in, at the minimum, a polo shirt, maybe a button-down shirt. Ties are optional, but preferred. Ladies, business dress, casual, business casual. This guy here in the t-shirt and jeans, this doesn't fly unless he's a hunter and he's up there on hunting day. So please do dress the part and encourage your people to dress well when they go to visit the legislature. But it says here on screen, one chef, many assistants. You're going to have one person who's in charge of the delegation that is going up to lobby. That person is going to be the one organizing the meetings, deciding on who is in the different groups, and then also appointing the spokesperson for each different group and who should speak in each room. So for example, I live in District 1 in Virginia. If I were going to be going to visit District 1, Delegate King, I should be the one speaking because I should be the one sharing my story, I should say, because I live in her district. Somebody who lives down in Roanoke or in Richmond or over in Winchester is going to have less of an impact than somebody who lives in her backyard. That does not necessarily mean I lead the meeting. So back when I was a lobbyist on Capitol Hill, what would happen is I would have gentlemen who had flown in from across the country, business owners who had flown in from across the country. We would walk in, I would introduce myself. Hi, I'm Dina. I'm here from the organization that I was lobbying for. And these gentlemen have come from Ohio to meet with you. Go ahead and share your stories. And then they would share their stories. And then I would pull out the handouts and say, here's some handouts about how this impacts them, and here's what we want you to do. And I would close out the meeting by making the ask. So I spoke a little bit beforehand, a little bit after, and then I introduced the gentlemen or the ladies who would then tell their stories. And I want your time with the legislators to be much the same, or with the legislative assistants to be much the same. So before you send them off into the Capitol, you should be doing message briefings and team buildings. And afterwards, when they come back, you should be doing debriefs and hopefully celebrations, because you need to know which delegates, which senators said that they're going to sign on to your bill, which ones said they're going to sponsor your bill, which ones said that they were going to vote for your bills. And you need to be sharing all that information. And also you need to be writing thank you notes afterwards. When you're managing your grassroots lobbyists, you need to prepare for them ahead of time. I want you to write out the talking points you're going to be using, because you now know how to use a Leesburg grid. So you're going to know what your talking points are. You might need new scripts. You might meet with the people ahead of time in the weeks leading up to it and saying, what are your stories? And having them write out their stories and then practice their stories and get their stories down to that simplest story possible that's going to make the biggest impact, so that they can tell it quickly and stay on time with the messaging or with the meeting. You want to get everybody's addresses, phone numbers, fax numbers, email addresses, both for your group and also for the delegates that you're meeting with. And that way, and you have those all printed out and you pass them out to the people in your delegation. the people that are lobbying with you, so that they know where to send their follow-up emails and their follow-up thank you, handwritten thank you notes. Your collateral is that handout that we talked about from the very beginning, or it might be as thank you gift or a sticker, or I'm trying to think of what we can give away to represent free speech. It might be a bunch of chattering teeth, because we want to set speech free, like the little, chattering teeth that go across. I don't know what your collateral is. I'd have to think about it a little bit longer, but I'm sure we could come up with some interesting pieces of collateral for you to leave behind to help make the point of the messaging that you're putting out there. And then, are there going to be any visual aids? So maybe your visual aid is that, you went from having 100,000 followers on Twitter to 2 followers on Twitter because Twitter banned you or silenced you. Or maybe you had this much money flowing through your Amazon store, and now you've got this much money flowing through your Amazon store. You're going to make that graph out so it's easy for people to visualize what you're talking about. Make sure that each member of your delegation that you're lobbying with, the people that are coming up, the grassroots lobbyists like you, have got writing paper and pens, envelopes, and stamps. Because when they get done with their meetings, they should step to the hallway and immediately write out a thank you note to the person with whom they had their meeting. And then they're going to address that, stamp that, and you're going to mail that out before you leave the state capitol so that it arrives the next day, the handwritten thank you note. And then you want to remember everyone to bring their digital devices. I'm looking for my phone. It's right here. Make sure everybody's got their phones, because if a sudden opportunity for a meeting comes up, maybe the governor finds out that you guys are all in the building and he or she wants to meet with you. Well, you're going to be texting out and saying, meet us at 3 o'clock down on the first floor outside the governor's office. We're getting a photo op. And you want everybody to come down. Well, if you're just spreading it by word, or if people don't have their phones and you don't have a list of everybody who is with your group, it's really hard to call those audibles and get people to come in for that opportunity that's happening. So this is why you want everybody to have their digital devices and make sure that they're charged, or make sure that they've got external batteries, because they're going to be doing it. I, for one, happen to have the note. I love my phone, but I can actually take notes and write on the screen. So I'll sit here and I'll take notes on all of my meetings by writing on my screen. And that way I know that they're saved and they're ready to go. And then I can email them off to the leader of my delegation, because I'm always getting my information from the person who's in charge of our lobby efforts. So I can email him my notes immediately in real time, and he can see how our meetings are progressing throughout the day. Real people impact elected officials. They don't want to hear about so-and-so, somebody else's story. They want to hear about your story. They don't want to hear about stories from outside of your state. They want to hear about how it's impacted you and other people in your state. They want to, under normal times, they want to see you face to face. So this means personal visits. This may mean Zoom visits right now. There is a lot of Zoom lobbying going around in legislators across the country. And I know there are people out there right now saying, she keeps saying Zoom, she's using Zoom. Why? Because it just works. If there is another video chat service that you want to use, that's fine. I'm going to say Zoom for right now because it works. So when you reach out to your legislator, if they're not doing personal meetings, face-to-face meetings, you say, hey, I would like to meet with you then virtually. Can we do a video conference call or a video chat? And you get everybody lined up, you get everybody prepared, just as if you were going to go to the state capitol and meet in person. Everybody gets dressed up, and you sit in front of your video cameras and you talk to the legislator as if you were talking in person and you were meeting them in person. You can also do emails and other digital communications. We're going to talk about handwritten letters and the importance of handwritten letters here in just a moment, and the importance of phone calls. And then you want to make sure that you're managing these grassroots efforts and leaving nothing to chance. We want to make sure that everything just works and works properly. When you're doing personal visits, whether it's virtual visit or in person, but I'm going to talk as if it's in person because most of our states are opening back up, you want to visit with people at their elected offices, at their government offices. You might also, if it's not during session, and you're going to be talking about this stuff. As Matt said from the very beginning, this is a long road we're going to be traveling with these issues. And so you may go into, like in South Dakota, session ends in March. So you've got from March until next January to meet with legislators and start building out your legislation. And so you might meet with them at their personal businesses or at neutral sites. What I don't want you to do is to see somebody in the airport and just run up and start talking to them about your issues in the airport. Or if you see somebody at the restaurant, you see one of your legislators at the restaurant, don't just go up to the table and corner them and force them to talk about your issues when they're in public with their families. I want you to be very respectful of their time and their energies, and treat them like the real people that they are, and set up meetings so that they have time to focus on you and focus on the issues that matter with you. I was once on a flight right after I got off the Hill, after lobbying. I was on a flight to Cincinnati. It was kind of funny because I was still dressed to the nines. And in the Uber to the airport, I asked my Uber driver if I should take off my heels or leave them on. He said, leave them on, you look good. So I left my heels on, and I happened to be sitting in the very front of the plane. And on rocked a senator who cared about my issue, who understood our issues, walks on. So I quickly texted my leader, and I said, hey, Senator so-and-so just got on the plane, what should I do? He's like, just write a note and have it delivered to his seat. So I pulled out I just came off the Hill, so I had my thank you notes there. So I wrote a thank you note to him, thanking him for his position on trade, put it in the envelope, addressed it to him. I couldn't get the attention of the flight attendant, so I just casually walked back. I asked for him, he looked up, I gave him the note, I said, I just want to say thank you and have a great day, and then I walked away. Well, when I got to our destination, he actually caught up with me, and we had a long chat on the train from the terminal to baggage claim about the issue of trade. And that was fine because I was letting him decide that it's okay to talk about these issues in public. We got interrupted several times with people who wanted pictures of their senator, and also were trying to lobby him on their issues. But he was focused on me, which was the important thing, because what you focus on is what's important, what's remembered. And so the fact that he was spending his time talking to me was kind of awesome. But make sure that you're respectful of their time, especially when they're out in public being themselves, right? So when you're doing personal visits, I want you to call and put into writing that you're going to be calling to ask for the appointment, and then you're going to follow up with a call, and then you're requesting the appointment, and then afterwards you're following up with a thank you note for allowing that appointment to happen. With digital communications and emails, you're going to put in the subject line why you're writing. I want you to be honest about why you're writing. I'm writing about HR 432. I'm writing about free speech and big tech. I'm writing about the pro-life agenda, right? You don't want to be like, hey, an invitation to join us or something like that, because that's very obtuse, and they're reading it and they feel like they've been tricked into it. Let them know why you're writing. Also, there might be different aids that deal with different issues. So if you put in the subject line what you're writing on, that email goes to the correct assistant for that legislator the first time, and it doesn't get passed around to a whole lot of people. In your letter, in your email, you're going to give your credentials, who you are, that you're a registered voter in their area or in their district, or you work in their district. Or you're not a registered voter in their district, but you're a registered voter in the state, and you're writing on behalf of some other people. What your job is, why you're writing them. What is it that gives you credibility to be writing them about this issue? You're always going to start off your letters with, I appreciate you. Thank you so very much for serving our state. Even if you disagree with them on most issues, they are still giving up time with their family, time at home, time away from their business to serve the state. And by expressing your gratitude that they are doing the work of the people, being servants, even if elected servants, even if you don't agree with them, by expressing your gratitude, it welcomes them in to continue reading the letter. Okay, if you start off argumentative, they're going to immediately put up shields and say, I don't want to read this. I don't want to look at this. But if you start off saying, thank you so very much for serving our state, that opens them up, it puts them into a frame of mind where they want to read the rest of the letter. tell them why you're writing, and then ask them a question. This way they have to respond to you. If you ask them how they feel about the issue, or will you sponsor the bill, ask them a question so that they have to respond to you, and then tell them that you'll be in touch again. So this here is a sample letter. Dear Representative or Senator, I'm a senator in your district. I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Dina. I live in Quantico, Virginia, and I'm a public speaker. I appreciate your efforts and sacrifices you make to serve as an elected official. As a member for Americans for Equal and Shared Parenting, I wanted to make you aware in the coming session we'll be pursuing some legislation that will impact families and children. I look forward to the opportunity to visit with you about this in the near future, and I will be in touch with your office to set something up. Thanks again for your service to our state. Yours truly, Dina Espenscheid. So, of course, this is about Americans for Shared Parenting, but we can change out this paragraph very easily. As a concerned citizen dealing with having my First Amendment rights infringed, I want to make you aware that in the coming session, a group of citizens is going to be pursuing some legislation that will impact our rights to free speech. I look forward to the opportunity to visit with you. That simple. See? So that's a simple email, and you're asking to request a meeting with them. The same thing goes if you're handwriting a letter. Handwritten letters are always better than email letters. Quickly, somebody type in and tell me why handwritten letters are always better than an email letter. Thoughts? Anybody? It's a personal touch. Good job. Aubrey said personal touch. She was first. Vlad says it's better since it's more personal. You guys are all saying, and Ronald says it took more time. Good job, guys. That's exactly it. It's a personal touch. It shows that you took the time and you couldn't just copy, paste. Even if you're writing the same letter to every single legislator, at least you took the time to handwrite it out. Make sure your handwriting is legible, by the way. Worst thing in the world is when you handwrite a letter, but nothing is legible in it. So write slowly, write legibly. Again, you're starting off with your credentials. You're telling them you appreciate them. You're telling them why you're writing. You're going to ask them for something, and then you're going to tell them that you'll be in touch. Same principles apply. So this letter might be a letter asking them to support a piece of legislation. So, dear Representative or Senator, I am a registered voter in your district. I want to share some thoughts on an important issue for our families. First, let me thank you for your service to our state and the sacrifices you made as elected official. Remember, this one's going to be handwritten because it's going to be one that we present either during our legislative meetings because you can't be there in person, or that we're going to send before legislative testimony so that they have a pack of letters on this issue sitting on their desk, sitting in front of them, and they know that this is an important issue to their constituents. Why is it important? Because everybody handwrote a letter. The Arizona Coalition for Equal Shared Parenting is opposing HB 232 because, and then we're going to put in one sentence of why we're opposing the bill. Or we are supporting our coalition called Arizonans for Free Speech is supporting HB 232 because free speech is central to our representative republic. And then you're going to put in your reason why. Then you're going to say, in fact, I know firsthand the detriment to society when free speech is infringed. And then tell a story. Tell your story about how you were harmed when free speech was infringed. As a matter of fact, I was arrested in college when I was passing out constitutions on my college campus. This fact that I was arrested for passing out the Constitution has never left me and has made me very active in searching out opportunities to promote free speech. I know that our current free speech laws, which you voted for 3 years ago, would have saved blah, blah, blah. You know, this sentence, obviously, this next sentence about the I know down here after his story is about equal shared parenting. You can do the follow-up. And then I look forward to your thoughts on this proposal and respectively request your opposition to or your support of HB 232. Again, I thank you for your service and I look forward to keeping in touch. Yours truly. This one doesn't have a question mark, That's the only thing that I might change about this letter. As a matter of fact, when I go in and make edits, and I always tweak things after I've given a presentation, I might say, I would like to hear your thoughts on HB 232. I hope that, like you, you are in opposition to this. What is your main reason for opposing it? And kind of putting it out there that you're hoping that they're also in opposition of it, or maybe you already know they're in opposition. But by asking the question, you're inviting them to respond to you in some way. So that is a change that I would actually make to this slide the next time that I present it. There you go. I'm always learning. If you're going to do a phone calls go much the same way. You start with your credentials, who you are, why you're calling. I want you to have a prepared, crisp script. It's got to be super short, because the people answering the phone, most likely not the legislator, they are taking quick messages, and the message that they are getting most of the time and giving to the legislator most of the time is, so-and-so wants you a yes on this bill, so-and-so wants you a no on that bill. Big thing here, it says, third bullet point, don't threaten. Invariably, it has the opposite effect. If you make a threat against somebody for bodily harm or physical harm, you're going to get a call from the state police. Don't do that. And if you're threatening them as far as like election goes, if you don't vote this way, we will primary you. The problem is, if they're a liberal and you're a conservative, are you really going to primary liberals? And if they're a conservative and they've got the party behind them, is your primary threat very credible? So don't threaten it, because automatically you're putting them on the defensive. Also, if somebody comes up and starts threatening you, are you going to want to work with them to find solutions? Probably not. So don't threaten legislators. Instead, ask for a response. Ask them, here's how I feel on this issue. We would like to know how he's planning on voting. We would like to know how she's planning on voting. Tell them that they'll be in touch, and thank the person answering the phone, because most of the times the person answering the phone is an unpaid intern or a legislative aide that makes very low money. And so you're going to be nice to them no matter what, because the nicer you are to them, the more likely they are to deliver your message to the person you're trying to get the message to. Does that make sense? I hope so. Again, never threaten the legislators. I'll never vote for you again. They pretty much know that's not true. I've got somebody in Virginia running for governor right now who I don't want to vote for, but frankly, if it's between him and the liberal who I think is going to get the nomination, of course I'm going to show up and I'm going to vote for the guy that I don't want to vote for, but I would rather vote for him than nobody at all. If you're threatening to primary them, that might be an empty threat. If you say you'll be sorry, that leaves it open to the imagination, and that's when law enforcement might get involved. And so again, if you threaten somebody and you start off your conversation threatening, it's not a good look, it's not a good feel, and it's not going to be a positive response from the other end. They're not going to want to work with you. So when you're communicating, be polite. Always, always, always be polite. Even if you thought you were going to be meeting with the legislator and a legislative aide, or even worse, an intern shows up, be polite to that person. Today's interns will be the chief of staff in 3 and 4 years, and the chief of staffs inevitably run for office. So you're going to be working with them as the elected officials in 4, 5, and 6 years. So be polite to the people with whom you're working at the state level. Plus, these people, the aides and the interns, they're the ones working on the elections with you. So if you're rude to them today, they're going to remember that when you show up to volunteer on the elections. And if you're ever running for office, you need them to volunteer on your elections. You need their donations. You need their support. So be polite no matter whom you're meeting with. Remember, every legislator is a potential supporter for this legislation. Even if they oppose you today, they might support you later. Elections have consequences. Elections come up all the time. Case in point, Lindsey Graham of 8 years ago is a different Lindsey Graham of 8 weeks ago, is a different Lindsey Graham of 8 days ago. So I know I'm picking on Lindsey Graham right now, Senator Graham, but he became more conservative as his election drew near, and he worked with conservatives as his election drew near. And so I want you to think about that. As people come up for re-election, they're more likely to support your issues. So just because they're a no now does not mean that they're going to be a no next year. It might just be that they haven't heard from enough people yet, or they don't understand the issue yet, or they don't understand the gravitas of the issue yet. And you're going to keep working with them to bring them over to your side. And again, legislative interns today become elected members tomorrow, so always be polite. Take rejection in stride. Some people that you expect are going to say yes will say no. This happens. They have different reasons for saying no. One of the things that's up to you is to figure out why they said no. So are they saying no? If you did your research properly, did you look up and did you see that maybe big tech is giving them a whole lot of donations? And does that impact their next election? And maybe that's why they're saying no. So you've got to figure out some way to counterbalance that. And maybe you'll be sharing that when they come up for re-election, that they've been bought and paid for, and that's why they're not supporting your First Amendment rights. One of the laws of public policy, so Morton Blackwell, our founder at the Leadership Institute, has collected through the years sayings and quips and what we call the laws of public policy. And you're going to be receiving a digital copy of these. The number 3 one, that's how important this is. There's like 46 or 47 of them. Number 3 is don't get angry except on purpose. Don't get angry except on purpose. I want you all to take a deep breath, and wherever you're at, whether it's at home or in your car, right now, I want you to say out loud with me, 1, 2, 3. Don't get angry except on purpose. I want you to internalize this one. If you leave here tonight with one thing, it is do not get angry except on purpose. Angry people cannot think rationally. They cannot think rationally. You cannot process information properly when you're angry. How many times have you worked in customer service and somebody comes up and they are just outraged that they got the wrong meal or that their bill was wrong, and they can't think angry until they get it out of their system? I want you to think rationally at all times when you're at the State House and when you're replying on social media networks and when you're writing letters and when you're calling. I want you to always have your wits about you. Therefore, you cannot get angry except on purpose. Keep your wits about you. Also, don't make the people with whom you're speaking angry except on purpose. Because if they're angry, they can't think rationally. Except on purpose, moral outrage is the most motivating force in politics. That's another one of our laws of public policy. Moral outrage is the most motivating force in politics. If you're going to make somebody angry, if you're going to make an elected official angry, make them angry at the situation you have found yourself in because your First Amendment rights have been infringed. And make them angry enough to take action on this issue. Make them angry enough to want to stop doing business, stop the state from doing business with the companies that are infringing on your First Amendment rights. You don't get angry except on purpose. Don't make others angry except on purpose, and make sure that that moral outrage is directed towards your purpose. Got it? And keep in mind, a legislator may oppose one proposal but be supportive of another, and they might oppose it during one session and like it during the next session. So a no today is not necessarily a no tomorrow, is not necessarily a no next year. Keep working with these people and don't get angry except on purpose. We're getting towards the end here, guys. Hang with me. I want you to always tell the people with whom you're meeting how much you appreciate them. Again, it sets the right tone. It thanks them, even if you don't like how they vote. By saying, I appreciate you, it sets the right tone, it puts them at ease, it tells them that you're going to be a friendly voice even if you disagree. So always let them know that you appreciate the sacrifices that they're making, okay? Now, when testifying before legislative committees, and this is our last section of the night, there's a specific way in which you're going to be testifying and a specific way in which you're going to be addressing the legislators. I want you to dress appropriately. Dress at the level of or one level higher than the committee members, especially if you're appearing in person and they can see your whole outfit from top to bottom. If you're testifying via Zoom or video conferencing, then okay, you can wear the pajama bottoms, but make sure nobody sees your pajama bottoms, okay? For the record, I am dressed from head to toe tonight, including dress shoes. Thank you very much. Men should be wearing proper business attire. This means slacks, at the minimum, a collared shirt. Maybe it means a tie, maybe not. Maybe it means a jacket, maybe not. That's kind of up to you, but definitely make sure your shirt has a collar. You can do an open collar shirt and a sports coat if you don't want to do a tie. And you don't need to do a jacket. If you've got a tie on, you don't necessarily need a jacket. But again, look to see how the legislators have been dressing in the past. You want to dress at their level or just one level higher. For women, this means a pantsuit or a skirt and blouse. I want you to do low-key jewelry. You can see tonight I've got on a simple gold chain with some little balls on it, and I've got simple gold hoop earrings. I've got a ring that's a little bit more substantial. The ring happens to be blue and it matches my shirt. It matches my background because it's Leadership Institute blue. And then I've got a watch on, simple watch. All of my jewelry matches. Nothing is big, nothing's bulky. You're not looking at the jewelry, you're looking at me. Hopefully you're not looking at my makeup and trying to figure out what the heck is going on. Yeah, I don't have any circles under my eyes. We're good tonight. You're looking at me and concentrating on my words. My lipstick is a neutral tone, but it's bold enough that you can see my lips. I do have my eyes highlighted and my eyebrows penciled in, but it's mostly just to make sure that you can see my features. If I didn't have my eyebrows penciled in, my eyebrows are extremely blonde, and when I lift my eyebrows to make a point, you wouldn't see me do this. It's kind of funny because my eyebrows are literally the same color as my skin. This is stuff you need to know about me because I need you to look in the mirror and actually ask somebody, how does my makeup look? And does it look appropriate? We don't want too much makeup. We want a nice, natural, modest. I want you to be modest. My shirt is buttoned up pretty far. If this were a Jewish coalition, I've spoken to Jewish groups before, I've had to button the top button. So I want you to think about being modest and making sure that they are focused on you, not your attributes. Okay? Exceptions to the rule, because there are some exceptions to the rule. If you are a rancher, then Western wear is appropriate. If you are a blue-collar worker and you're going and lobbying on blue-collar, business casual is appropriate. But I don't want you showing up dirty. Make sure that you are clean. Make sure it's business casual, not necessarily your work wear. For women, I hate to tell you this, tights are not pants. Ladies, tights are not pants. If you are wearing tights, that means your tunic or your shirt has got to go at least to mid-thigh. Okay, tights are not pants. We're being modest here. We don't know the people on the committee that you're speaking to. We don't know what their level of commitment is to modesty. So we want to play towards a more modest side. So tights are no-no unless your shirt, your tunic, your skirt goes to at least mid-thigh. Men, we don't want to see your shirts unbuttoned. The top collar, yes, but more than the top collar, like I've got more unbuttoned tonight, that's a no on men. And also take out your earphones. So I don't have any earphones in tonight. Occasionally when I do these, I'll put an earphone into my ear so I can hear what the computer is saying. But when you go to testify, when you're meeting with people, take out the Bluetooth earphones. I don't want to see earphones in your ears. I don't want to see the little stems sticking out of your ears. I want you to be speaking to them. Now, if you're doing it virtually like this and you need those earphones in order to hear, that's a different matter. But if you're face-to-face or you're in person, take those out for the duration of your time with the legislature. If you need to make a phone call, you're doing this. You're putting the phone to your face because that way it just looks and sounds more professional. Also, if you're walking around talking to somebody, they don't just assume that you're crazy because they don't realize that you're talking not to them, but to somebody on the phone, which happens if you've got the earphones in, right? Okay. I want you to study up ahead of time the rules of the committee where you're going to be giving your testimony. Do you need to sign in ahead of time? When do you need to sign in? Where do you need to sign in? And how do you need to sign in? This has been changing. And so I need you to look at, even if you've done testimonies before, look at and find out what the current rules are, especially with the COVID shutdowns. Is it all online or is it in person? Do I need to sign up ahead of time? Do I need to have a negative COVID test? Are they going to take my temperature? Do I need to wear a mask or no mask? Find out these things ahead of time and make sure that you follow the rules. Because the last thing you want to do is upset somebody by not following the rules or not even being allowed to testify after you've driven hours to get to the state capitol, right? Normal rules of testimony. So when I say testify, most of the time at the state house, witnesses are not sworn in. They're not sworn in to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. However, I want you to be honest no matter what. Don't tell any lies because the lies will come back to haunt you. They will figure out if you're lying, right? Understand how to address the members. So remember back the very first slide that I gave, I started my testimony and I stopped and I said, no, actually what I would say is chairman. In South Dakota, the custom is that you address the chairman first and ask for permission to address the rest of the committee. And so even like afterwards, if I'm brought back up after my testimony to answer any questions, if somebody over here asks a question, I would go, Chairman, may I answer? He would say, yes, thank you, Chairman. Well, Senator, the answer to your question is this. And I would address the chairman first before addressing any members of the other committees. Always be respectful and don't take any negative comments personally. And again, know how to address the members. You don't call them by their first name when you're up there. You call them chairman, senator, delegate, representative, whatever that is. Okay, guys, we've got 8 more slides, so we're almost there. Know the general makeup of the committee. Who are the difficult members? Who are the members that are on your side? This is information that you should be gathering throughout the whole legislative process. And as your members and groups in your coalitions go about meeting with the members before any committee hearing meetings, hopefully we know exactly who's going to give us problems. And that way you can address them and talk to them and share your stories with those members specifically. Because when you're talking directly to them and sharing your stories with them, that makes that connection. Hopefully they start to empathize with you and maybe they'll drop some of their objections. Know if your committee chairperson is a stickler for propriety. Do they keep time? And if they keep time, who is the timekeeper? Does the chair tend to be argumentative or will they let anything go? Know about these things. And remember, if they're keeping time, make sure that you stay on time. And if you've got extra time, yield your time back to your side so that somebody else can use your time as they're giving testimony on behalf of your issues. Know your messaging points. And we've talked at the beginning of this presentation all about how to define those differences. We've talked about how to make your message sticky, and we've talked about how to tell stories. For the most part, everybody who is testifying on your behalf or on your group's behalf should probably be telling stories about how this issue has impacted them and then asking them to vote yes or no on this issue. Because then you're going to have a handout with the statistics. And if the legislators want more information, they can bring you back up and ask you more questions about it. But if you spend all your time telling statistics, then there's no time to tell the stories because they're not going to come back, bring you back up to tell stories, but they might ask questions on the statistics. So I want you to be prepared to tell your stories. You may need to prepare your speech ahead of time. I'm going to assume you guys still see me, although my video copy just closed. So if you can't see me, you can't hear me, please text me right now on the chat rooms. They can't see me, but apparently you can still hear me. So I'm going to keep going forward with, you can hear me. Audio is still good. Because eventually when you start to run out of time, you'll get cut off from your from your presentation. Hold on, they're coming and adjusting the battery on the on the camera. That's what you guys can't see and can't hear. So eventually they're going to yank yourself, especially when you're on a virtual meeting. They can just, when you run out of time, turn off your video, turn off your sound, and there's nothing you can do about it. You're at the will and at the mercy of the person running your camera or running the camera operations. Thank you so very much, Cody. I want you to have your leave behind piece ready to go so that so that when you begin, you can say, well, a handout is being delivered with information about this topic, but here's what I had to say about it. And making sure that I don't want you speaking off the cuff when at all possible, because when you're speaking off the cuff, you're not quite sure what you're going to say or how you're going to say it. Instead, I want you staying on topic. Know the key points that you need to make, and again, have those visual aids and handouts ready. So if you're going to do a visual aid of the changes in your company's business because of free speech being hampered, then have that visual aid that ready to go, ready to be held up. Make sure it's a big enough poster that it can be seen by everybody in the room. Prepare your testimony to fit the rules. And if time is limited, cover the most important items first before you time out. And if there's more people to testify, have everybody lined up and ready to go so that the messages build one on top of another, on top of another, on top of another. This is why it's important to find out, do you need to sign in early? Do you need to sign in? What order do they take people who are giving testimony? So maybe you send somebody from your coalition to sit outside of the meeting super early in the morning, and then you sign in everybody who's going to give testimony so that you're all in the correct order of that you want to go. Because hopefully you met in the days and weeks before the hearing came up to work out your testimony, what stories are being told, so everybody hits on a different piece and a different message, and it all works together to move people forward. So to close out tonight, I've got a little video to show you about how one group, these two people, organized their testimony in such a way to make the point that they needed to make to the city council.
Identify yourself.
What up, council? My name is Chad Kroger. I'm an activist and house party enthusiast. Over the past week, I've been in a state of deep despair upon hearing the news that LA is trying to outlaw house parties in the Hollywood Hills. I am here determined to stop this future atrocity. House parties were the bedrock of my development as a young man in San Clemente. My first introduction to manhood came when the captain of my water polo team, Boomer Kingsley, asked me to shotgun a tall can of Bud Light in front of the whole squad at his end of the season bash. His parents were in Tahoe at the time, so we tore that weekend up. It was epic, and I was super stoked. My newfound confidence gave me the courage to ask out the most popular girl in school, Lauren Stockholder, to prom that year. She rejected me, and I had to go with Stacy McMillan, but I didn't care because I was so amped on chugging with my boys. That's what house parties do. Raging at house parties is the truest way to party.
Next speaker, please come and identify yourself.
What up, council? My name is JT Parr. I am also here to defend parties in the Hollywood Hills. I grew up like most kids, worried I couldn't bench 2 plates, that I wouldn't fit in, that I wouldn't find love. Then I discovered partying, and suddenly all those worries went to the wayside. I didn't need love. I had keg stands. I discovered I was great at raging, and it revealed wonderful things about myself. I could relate to bros regardless of what kind of bro they were. I could be at a party and moon people, and everyone would laugh, be witty. Or I could play beer pong and compete with real integrity. In short, I fulfilled my potential. If you outlaw house parties, you may keep the volume down, but an externality is that you may keep people from bonding. America needs bonding. People need to put aside their differences and find common joy. There's no more effective environment for that than a frickin' rager. This is best exemplified in me and Chad's relationship. We were star-crossed. He a surfer, me a bodyboarder.
Thank you. And I want to welcome you to LA Council's Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
So yes, it was revealed afterwards that these were the Hollywood actors. However, it was a real issue that was being brought up before City Council, and those are real testimonies that they put together to share their stories. And it's just kind of a fun way to kind of finish off this training. You'll notice that they prepared their stories ahead of time. They addressed the City Council properly. I might have changed what they were wearing, but it fit the personas that they were playing. And then as soon as the buzzer hit, they didn't try to fight for more time. They thanked them and they stepped to the side, because that's what we do when we do testimonies. And this is why we also need to prepare a testimony ahead of time to make sure that we stay on time. So in conclusion, a couple final slides here. The rule number one, when you're thinking about your testimony, is answer the question that you want to be asked. Answering questions. Sorry, I'm not quite in concluding yet. One of the great news is that there is a time limit for how much time you have to testify. But if you've got a supporter or sponsors on that committee, they can ask questions of you and bring you back up. And in most states, that time doesn't go against your testimony time and is bonus time. It's extra time. So I want you to work ahead of time with your legislators, the people who are sponsoring your bill, the people who are sitting on that committee who are supportive of your legislation, to write to them good questions to ask you to follow up. And you plant those questions with those people, so that when you're sitting there, you've already given your testimony, the 5 people who were going to testify on your bill for the whole 10 minutes you get to testify, they've all given their speeches, you guys have all shared your stories, and you're sitting back in the audience. And then the chairman will say to the members, are there any questions before we go ahead and vote on this bill? And somebody will say, yes, I have a question. As a matter of fact, I would like to bring Ms. Espenshide back up for some points of clarity. And then they can say, will you explain how this bill will impact XYZ? And I get as much time as I want to speak on to answer that question. Of course, first I say, Mr. Chairman, may I answer the question? And he'll say yes, or she'll say yes. And then I go, Senator, that's an excellent question. Thank you so very much for giving me the time and the opportunity to address this, because I was so aggrieved by what I heard our opposition say. Here's the facts of what this will do. Those companies can still do business with whomever they want. They just have to decide whether they would want to do business with the people of the state or with the state government. And then you answer your question, and you answer the question that you want asked. So the next one is answer the question you want asked. If you ask a question, well, doesn't this limit the corporation's free speech? And you kind of look at them and you go, I thought corporations weren't people, and therefore people have free speech, not corporations. That's liberal lines and liberal logic thrown back at them. You find that way to do the block and pivot, like we talked about with the Senator Rubio video up. When answering, repeat your messaging points as many times as possible. So once I did a live debate. Now this was a debate where I was asking people to vote for me, but I said, I want you to vote yes on 10, because yes on 10 is going to allow the state to decide how best to do work with businesses that are actually working for the people. And that's why we need you to vote yes on 10, because a yes on 10 vote is going to do this and that. And I said yes on 10 like 15 times. It drove my opponent crazy, because my takeaway that I wanted them to all leave with was yes on 10. And I said it over and over and over again to make that message stick. Remember the messaging that you've worked out ahead of time and stick to it. Now is not a time to call audibles. I could not believe when my trade partner lobbyist friend turned around and started talking about Monsanto and GMOs. This was not why we were in the meeting. This was not what we were testifying on. This was not what we were lobbying on. That was a waste of our time and a waste of our energy. If you don't know the answer to a question, say so and offer to find the answer, and then get back in touch with them. Or if it's somebody else has the answer to the question, I want you to yield your time. I don't have the answer, but I know that Matt does. Matt Brainerd is here from Look Ahead America. I would like to yield my time to Matt Brainerd from Look Ahead America so he can answer that question. Chairman, may I have Matt come up and answer that question? And then the chairman will probably say yes, and then Matt and I will switch out, just as we're about to here in just a few slides. Up next, tricks of the trade. Again, I talked about planning questions within the committee. If you can, use humor, but be careful, because personal humor, non-personal humor may not be appropriate. Sexual innuendos are not appropriate. There were some that were flying before when we were doing the Clinton stuff. No sexual innuendos. People do love self-deprecating humor, like when I was telling you about my eyebrows and how I use them to express myself, and that's why I need to pencil them in, right? Remember that words have meaning, and words might have multiple meanings, so make sure you know what words you're using and use the specific words you want to use so that you don't accidentally express something you weren't intending on. Speak in short sentences. These committee members need to be able to follow your argument and understand your points. And so the longer your sentences are, and the more ands, and thens, the harder it is to follow where you're leading them. So short sentences are better. Use understandable words, avoid acronyms. If I'm talking about the NRA, the first time I'm going to talk about the National Rifle Association. Because somebody in that room is going to think that the NRA is the National Republican Assemblies. And so either one might be endorsing this piece of legislation. Make sure you know which NRA you're talking about. And then look for subtle clues. Look for the body language of the people to whom you're addressing. If their arms are crossed, they're leaning back, you're probably not selling them very well. If they're leaning forward and they've got their hands rested, they're probably very much engaged and interested in what you have to say. Look for the ones that look like they're closed and see if you can try to open them up by addressing them, making the eye contact and telling them your story to them. Because if you can get them to open up their arms, now they're open to your message and more willing to listen to what you have to say. So tonight, I want you to, for 2 minutes, I want you to prepare a 2-minute testimony that you might put before a committee on this issue. What story are you going to tell in 2 minutes? What details are you going to include in that story to make it come alive? And prepare a story that demonstrates the problem, and then ask for some sort of action at the end. If you want, you can record that story and send it to me, or you could put it up. Think about that and then post it out there, share it, because this is an issue that's going to matter, and you need to find ways to share your story in that 2 minutes. So in conclusion tonight, we talked about the contrast with the Leesburg grids. We talked about the sticky messages. We talked about sharing stories. Then we talked about how to talk to the legislators and how to give testimony. What I'm going to do right now, I'm going to pause the video because we're going to bring in Matt Brainerd, and he and I are going to go through the questions that were asked via the question and answer. Give me just a moment to bring over the other chair. And then I'm sure Cody will come in and make sure our camera angle is correct. Whoops, there we go. Okay, here comes, actually it's Matt now. Hello, Matt. Okay, so, yeah, we are going to be both on the screen, so come my way just a little bit, Matt. Oh, there we go. That works too.
Your mic is off.
My mic is back on. Is your mic on?
Yep.
Excellent. I think they can both hear us.
All right, so first I need to thank Dina. She's too humble to admit this, but we actually had other lecturers who were also supposed to be here tonight, like canceled at the very last minute for personal issues. She did their lectures for them. She did her own lecture at the beginning, but then she basically continued with what they were supposed to talk about. So I know it was a big, I couldn't imagine doing that myself. So her versatility and jumping in to the gap and like giving other people's lectures was, I think exceptional. Now, we're always going to be looking for ways to improve these. But I did see some comments from folks saying, oh, this is a little too long, or I wish this would go quicker, or some of this stuff doesn't, kind of already know it. If this is challenging, I'll tell you what's challenging, is driving 3 hours to your state capitol, spending 5 hours in the hearing room, waiting for your chance to talk, and then getting those 3 minutes to go up, and then having to drive home 3 hours. And those 3 minutes you get up there to talk are going to go like that. Mm-hmm. This is hard. Standing outside a Walmart for 18 hours on a Sunday during football season to collect new voter registrations, that is hard. This is all hard stuff. And I just want to get it out of your heads, please. Nothing we're proceeding with here, no part of our mission is actually easy. This is all hard work. But remember, we're descendants of people who on Christmas night crossed the Delaware in freezing weather to attack the British. So I mean, we can get through a 3-4 hour lecture here talking about the proper way to talk to a committee, right? I know we can do this. All right.
Well, and here's the thing. It might be rote for you, or it might be something that you already know. That's fantastic. But I'm sure that there's somebody out there who has never even been to their state capital. I have been in many state capitals. I've been in every state capital in every state that I've ever lived in, except for Florida. For some reason, when I lived in Florida, and I lived there for about 2.5 years, I never made it inside the building. It was just not part of my job description. It wasn't part of what I did, and I didn't have to go to Tallahassee. And frankly, I didn't ever go into, oh my gosh, I just realized I've never been in Kentucky State Capitol. I grew up in Kentucky and have never been inside their state capitol. So until you've been through this, you don't know how to do it. It really is not, it feels like it's second nature, but really it does take somebody sitting down and saying, hey, we're going to do it this way, not that way. And like, for example, I've been up in Pierce, South Dakota, and I know it's super cold and it's horrible and everybody's got their boots on and stuff. And then you see somebody step up and they're wearing a crop top and you're like, what the heck were you thinking? Like, yeah. Get dressed before you show up here. If you want to be taken seriously, you have to dress the part.
And I want to add too, though, that while a lot of this stuff might be obvious to you, remember, if you're here, you're probably going to be a leader in this movement. And what we're really doing here is we're not training you, we're training the trainers. So if you've sat through this, you got through it, and you absorbed it, and you're still engaged and active, we're counting on you you're going to be training people whom you bring to the Capitol with and making sure they're all in line, making sure they know what you now know. So anyway, you want to take some questions?
Sure, absolutely. And I just saw, okay, so what Matt and I are looking at right now is a flip through, and it's going really super fast of everybody sharing their comments, right, from the chat room. One that caught my eye was the emotional stuff feels manipulative. I hear that all the time from my audiences in yes and no. It's not that you're manipulating them. It's that you are guiding them and showing them how important this message is for you. If your child comes up to you and goes, Mom, I want $5 to buy a doll. Mom, I really want $5 to buy a doll. This doll is the prettiest doll I've ever seen, and I really, really want it. Which one are you going to be more likely? And you're like, oh, fine, I'll buy you the doll. It's not that the child is manipulating you to get the doll. It's that they are expressing themselves properly. If you had been harmed because somebody trampled on your rights and they are getting paid with taxpayer dollars, share that emotion. You know, it is not a manipulation. It is you expressing yourself properly. Okay, and be honest with it. I mean, I don't mean you faking emotions and stuff. Will you please, so question number one is, will you please save the chat and the transcript? Yes, on the replay, you'll be able to see that, and I will try to save the chat, download the chat, and put it into the MyLI accounts that you're going to see later. So I'm going to dismiss that one. Next up, can a private citizen break the law, and how can private companies break the law?
Let's focus on procedure questions rather than issues, because we'll have other opportunities to talk about the specifics of this particular legislative objective. So I really want to focus on questions that are like procedural, how do we do certain things? So we're just going to keep going through.
Tell me when to stop scrolling.
Do you acknowledge their points?
I agree with companies have a right to free speech. But that's the block, then the pivot. Okay, so the block and the pivot. So in my example was, should companies have the right to do business? Should private companies have a right to do business with whom they want? Well, to be honest, to be not hypocritical, I'm on the side of the baker who says that it is my artistic vision that I'm putting out there when I make the cake, and therefore I should have a right as to what topic I put out there. But the thing is, the baker is not making the cake with taxpayer dollars. But these companies are making the cake. They are using taxpayer dollars to make these formats, these chat rooms, these areas. And if they want to be a publisher, then they can publish what they want. But if they are going to just be a utility carrier, like your telephone company, they shouldn't be able to limit your free speech. The telephone company, Verizon, does not hang up on me when I talk with my friends about things that Verizon does not like opposing Verizon bills, right? They don't hang up on me because they don't have the right to monitor my speech and hang up on me if they're a utility. And so a lot of these companies are acting like utilities, or pretending to be utilities, or
Right.
have
Well, I
these
think-
professions.
Right, I
Yeah,
think
you explain more.
I mean, the bottom line is, of course, acknowledge they have a right to free speech, but they're not entitled to enrich themselves. They don't have a right to government contracts. They don't have a right to government spending. They don't have a right to conduct financial business with the state when they are suppressing the population of the state's First Amendment rights, when they're deplatforming businesses in the state because they don't agree with their politics, or firing somebody because they went to a completely legal political rally on their own time. They're free to do all of that. They're just not entitled, because people agree with free speech, but people are opposed to entitlement, especially when it comes to big companies. You can point, the horizon in many state capitals is lined with buildings, and across the top of them are the names of these businesses. They're not there to be nice. They're in those state capitals to get your money. And that's fine. That's fine. But if they're going to get your money, they've got to respect your rights. They've got to respect the rights of the citizens. And it's common for states to attach all kinds of riders to the companies they do business with, forbidding them from doing all kinds of things. This is just one more thing, and it's probably the most important thing because it's the First Amendment. Let's see if we got some more good questions here.
Yeah, comment on emotion is better if it's first person or second person. Yes, if you're giving a story in the third person, it's really hard to share emotion.
Always first person.
So always first person. Or let me tell you the story of my friend John and what happened to John. He couldn't be here today, but he asked me to share his story.
Can we get a recording? Yes, this will be on YouTube afterwards.
Yes.
Let's keep going.
Okay.
Okay, so when we give our 2-minute speech, I presume is the homework.
Yes.
Just imagine that you wandered into your state legislator's office on a day that he's having a public forum, or he's doing a meet and greet. A lot of these state legislatures, some of them are fairly public. They'll do town hall meetings, or they'll have like a weekly breakfast at some place in the district.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what it is. And more than 2 minutes is probably all they have. 2 minutes is about all they have time for. So you want to be able to be clear and concise in that time, and it's really good practice. So.
Yeah, and I want, thinking about that was something I didn't even cover. Now that we're in session, there's going to be opportunities for like League of Women Voters forums, and in South Dakota we called them Cracker Barrels, where they got together, the legislators got together, they sat up on a dais and they took questions from the audience. Now normally the questions were written out on paper and pre-screened. So I want you to figure out different ways to write your question to get them to say yes or no, I support or I oppose this issue, and write it in several different ways, but it's always got to be short, because the person reading it isn't going to read the 2-minute speech. They're not going to even read the 30-second whatever. They're going to read HR 232 deals with free speech and whether or not companies should be receiving tax funding if they have been infringing on free speech. How do you feel about this? Should companies who receive tax funding be allowed to receive whatever? And keep in mind, whoever is your host for the day is probably going to go through and choose which questions they like and which questions they don't like. So that's going to be a thing.
Okay, this is an easy one. I'm just going to jump through.
Yeah, go right ahead. Please do. Please do.
Regarding the stories, do they have to be, or should they be true stories, or can they be made up? Absolutely true, because you don't want to get, but look, like I told you, those guys, these companies, they have their names on buildings surrounding the Capitol. They've got a lot of money. And if they can blow you up, if they have any way to blow you up because you maybe told a story that wasn't true, even though you're not under oath or whatever, just, because you shouldn't let the truth get in the way of a good story, that's absolutely false. They will blow you up, and you don't want to give them any easy wins. An easy win for you is when they come and say something that's false. You're ready to blow them up, right? Don't let them blow you up, especially on something like that. That's a good question.
Yes, that's a great question.
Let's see. How can we get today's young people to care about the issue? I don't think there's any generation that's been more plugged into the internet or more aware of internet censorship than young people. And I'll tell you something else, is that when you're going to these meetings with state legislators in person at either outside the Capitol, or if it is actually a hearing or just going to his office. Basically, the typical people who show up here are extremely well dressed, tend to be a bit older, lobbyists who are very well heeled and very well paid. They don't see too many young people don't make it a point. And actually, when I was a young person, I was a leader of a group in my high school, and we were lobbying the city council on something. And they were shocked to see somebody, I had hair back then, but didn't have gray hair coming in to talk to them. Young people are tremendous assets for getting attention for your issue because they're so unusual at the state legislative level. I mean, I hate to point her out, but there's a reason that Greta Thunberg caught fire because you have this young person who seemed to be very articulate about an issue. And that goes across the board for calling into talk radio shows as well. You get your young people out there by all means. And this is an issue they're particularly attuned to.
And the good news about getting young people involved, the Leadership Institute has an entire program called the, oh my gosh, my brain just froze, the Youth Leadership School. And we go on to college campuses and we help students on college campuses actually build out their groups. There are many, many groups out there. You should actually, as you're building up your coalitions, especially about this issue, go on to the college campuses and find those groups, the conservative groups on college campuses, and talk to them about getting involved. We here at the Leadership Institute have been running for the last 3 years, a group called the Normandy Project. This is a coalition group of organizations from across the spectrum, the center-right spectrum, that are fighting for free speech on college campuses. So you'd be shocked, but the young people on college campuses who are conservative have already been paving the way on this, and they already know the talking points, and they already know how to impact and make change. And many of them have already been to the state legislator to talk about how to bring free speech to college campuses. This is an extension of that. So if they were fighting for it when they were in college, now they're going to be fighting for it after college because it's just a growth from there.
Right. I want to go quick.
Yes, please.
We'll go quickly through a couple of these so then we can wrap up.
Mm-hmm.
I've not been blocked on social media, believe our First Amendment rights are important. How to make a personal story if I've not experienced firsthand censorship? Well, remember, it's your money they're handing over to these companies doing censoring. You already have a stake in it. You're a taxpayer in that state. And that, you can always find different angles to come at these things. The more nuanced and more personal, the better. So you can certainly talk about the fact that maybe somebody in your family has fought and died, or you yourself have been in the military to secure these rights. And here you are back home paying taxes so the government can give that money to people who are censoring your neighbors, your friends, people who just simply have a different point, even somebody who has a different point of view than you do. And you just say, look, I don't agree with that person said at all, but it is legal speech, it's political speech, it should be protected, and that person was thrown off the platform by a company that is receiving my tax dollars. That's a very personal case you can make.
Yep.
Let's see what else we got.
There was one about letter writing to congressmen. It was right below that.
Here. Yeah.
Difficult. Okay, so the question was from Eden. I find writing a letter to my congressional representative would be difficult given the opposing views. How would I go about that if my voice is not heard? Well, first of all, with what we're talking about today, it's not necessarily lobbying Congress. We're talking about lobbying your state legislator. And even if they oppose you on this stuff, you still need to write the letters so that they feel the weight and they actually think twice before they're voting no or before they're speaking up. Because if you could take somebody who is against you and move them from I'm going to speak on the floor to I'm just going to quietly sit back and vote no, that in a way is a victory because now they are not convincing others to vote no as well. And if you could take them from, well, I was planning on voting now, but now I'm just going to walk out of the room and not be present for this vote, that is a victory because now you're one step closer, you're one vote closer to getting a yes.
Right, and I would add that there's almost no true collegiality in Washington, D.C. Across the aisles in the House or Senate, but there's a lot of collegiality among the state legislatures. They're a lot friendly. It's a lot less hyper-partisan. And as he was saying, maybe an opponent controls the committee and he's not supportive of your issue, but he might grant the minority an opportunity to hold a hearing on it because they got a letter from you. So you don't necessarily have to win them over to at least to advance the cause. Will we receive a recording of this review? Yes, it will be on,
Yes.
I think we'll put it on YouTube or something similar, all the other platforms.
I
It's
will
kind of
tell
funny.
you, before the end of this, I will tell you what the URL is going to be, but I'm creating a hanging chat here. What is that, the cliffhanger? I'm making you pay attention. I did just see a question pop by about using social media in order to promote these things. We have an entire on-demand class that is already up at leadershipinstitute.org/on-demand classes. In my follow-up email, I'm going to give you that link. There's a lot of instructions on how to log on and a coupon code, the word Grassroots, on how to watch those for free. So there is an entire 6-hour course on how best to use social media to promote your causes. Now, granted, all of this stuff keeps updating and changing very, very rapidly, but that is available for there, and we're going to be cutting new videos and posting them up as quickly as we can at leadershipinstitute.org/on-demand classes.
Right, we've just got a few minutes and I want to wrap this up, but here's a good question. For effective lobbying, is it best to do it as part of an official organization, or can you be a group of friends? Here's what I would suggest, is that to impact the legislature all at once with all of your people that agree on an issue has an effect. Do they have to be part of the same organization? No. But do they have to have the same message? Yes. So it's really more about a coordinated effort, hitting them all at the same time from all of their different districts or over the same period of time of raising the temperature on the issue. So that's really what needs to unite you much more than part of an organization, because I could see an issue like this. You could have 5 or 6 different coalitions, all from different angles, all have their different interests in it, coming together. What matters is the message, and ultimately, what happens is, on the technical side, I'm not sure if we really got into this, but we probably would in another class, is something like this gets turned into legislative council. It becomes a real piece of legislation. That legislation then ideally gets sponsored into a committee. There are hearings, gets out of committee, amendments, all this process becomes very complicated. But it's very important to keep the pressure and to make it, advance it down the field, is a unity of message, much more so than a unity of, say, an organization.
Yep. And just to add to that, an example. So back when I was a pro-life lobbyist in South Dakota, we had our pro-life lobby group and all of our friends from the Catholic Church and Concerned Women for America and Eagle Forum and the rest. Well, then an issue came up where they were trying to legalize human cloning in South Dakota so that they can do human embryonic research. So we took the exact same people, changed who was in charge and changed the name and made it Cures Not Clones. And it was a coalition called Cures Not Clones. Exact same people working together, but this time our messaging was just a little bit different than the pro-life stuff. And we were able to convince enough people to vote no on this bill that we killed the legislation. And then we even killed some efforts to bring it to a vote of the people. Same group of people working in a different way, but they thought they were working with 2 separate coalitions, because they had the pro-life coalition led by the women, and then this Cures Not Clones coalition led by the men. Same people. So yes, there is a reason to both go individually and as a group.
Yeah, so I kind of want to, there are a lot of questions that all fall into the same category of what next. So I'll wrap it up with that.
Go right ahead, and then I'll do a few closing thoughts as far as Leadership Institute paperwork goes.
Okay, sounds good. So one of the questions we have, one of the common questions I keep seeing coming through the ones we scrolled through, I'm sorry we can get to all of them, there's like 124 and
they keep coming.
Yes, they keep coming, is what next? And right now, we've got a few subsequent steps that are planned, but what you should do now, along with the homework that you were assigned, is start to till the soil on this issue, by which I mean find out who your state representatives and state senators are. In some cases you have 2 of one or 1 of the other, but that's easily Googleable or DuckDuckGoable. And I'll probably share some links with you in a subsequent email to everybody that's attended this, like this is where you can go. Figure out what your 2 minutes are and reach out to that representative on that issue and on this priority. You can even send them a copy of this if you want, or you can even take the letterhead off if you want, but you can send it as you like and find out what they think about it. And that also is the process of letting them know that, hey, this is an issue now to have on their radar. And they might get a couple messages. You can then start encouraging your friends to message on the same issue. But we're going to be organizing people who've signed up for this and are other volunteers are interested in volunteering through Look at America, organized in each of your states. Now, this is where I'm going to make a little bit of an ask. I am interested in individuals who are interested in being state volunteer coordinators. Now, if you're comfortable speaking to strangers, if you're good with project management, if you've got 15 hours plus an hour, 15 plus hours a week to volunteer, I'd like to hear from you. There's a page on our website, lookaheadamerica.org/lead. Please fill that out. We'll start talking to people because I know that leading these efforts isn't necessarily for everyone. You can still write letters to your member. You can still talk to your neighbors about it. You can still go even testify, show up at meetings, all these things. That's fine. Everything you're willing to do, I'm happy to take. Everything you're willing to do can help make a difference. But we are looking for leaders in each of these states to help coordinate these efforts. Because right now, LAA's Look Ahead America is essentially a very small organization. We're still raising money. But that sort of gets me to where what I want to talk about is what is our path forward as Look Ahead America as an organization? Because this is our first ever training session. Our plan is to have field staff and offices across the country, ideally one in every congressional district in the country. Our plans for this year are to make it into Virginia and Pennsylvania, and by the end of next cycle, in at least 9 or 10 states, or by the end of 2022. By 2024, we'd like to have professional operations in all the states. Now, there's somebody I admire a little bit, maybe not for the reasons you might be aware of her, but Stacey Abrams in Georgia. She is on the other side from me, but she did a phenomenal job with registering, educating, and turning out to vote people in Georgia. Now, putting aside illegal ballots for a moment, I was personally in Georgia after the election in some investigations. I walked through entire neighborhoods of people that she registered to vote and turned out. She did that, but she did that with the help of a lot of money from Mark Zuckerberg. He basically backed up a truck to her house and dumped it. Now, Look Ahead America's truck from Mark Zuckerberg, I don't know if it got lost or they didn't use Waze or something, but I'm not holding my breath on it.
Waze is owned by Google.
Yeah, okay, well, there you go. But what we do, it does cost money. It does take an investment. So if you're so moved by our cause of registering, educating, and turning out disaffected patriotic Americans, of whom I have a database of millions, and there's very few states where if they were registered, educated, and turned out to vote, where they would not be determinative. Very few states where that wouldn't be the case, where they wouldn't be determinative in the outcome of those elections. Along with advocacy, organizing people to go into their state capitals and talk about these important patriotic issues, not just on tech censorship, but other things, which is coming up soon from us, is voter integrity. So all this stuff, it's difficult, it's very expensive, and we don't have a Zuckerberg, but what I have is you. And I think you're actually better because I know you're loyal. You're not just trying to increase the bottom line of your company. You're here because you believe in the cause. And if you are able, please go to lookaheadamerica.org/donate and help us out. Our average donation is about $25, believe it or not. But we're hopefully going to meet our fundraising goal to be able to deploy. And what we'd like to do is bring this in person and much more in depth into each of your states, and to continue to grow and make this training more robust, and to really train the trainers so that you can continue to be effective in your state. So you can basically get a graduate degree in engagement and in advocacy for your state. So we're really eager to do that, but we can only do it if we have your help. And I'm very glad you came out here. Most people barely vote if you're here, you're really somebody special. You're really somebody who has the potential to shape the future of this country. If you made it through this lecture, I want to hear from you. I want to hear on ideas on how you can improve this. I think there'll be some feedback that LI sends you. But we're going to do another one of these that is a little bit more focused on organizing as well as some lobbying, with a much bigger, I think, faculty on the 15th, the day after Valentine's Day. So everyone should be in a great mood.
President's Day.
Yes, President. Oh, what a perfect day for that.
Yes, I know.
Yes.
So
well, with that, I'll hand it back over to you, but thank you for coming out tonight.
Are we going to do it at 7 p.m. again, by the way?
We'll figure out the timing of the syllabus.
We'll let you know
yes.
the timing and everything else. We'll make it work for y'all. So tiny bit of paperwork stuff. If you are still on, you have now completed 3 hours of training with the Leadership Institute. Congratulations. That means that you've been trained by the Leadership Institute. So you are eligible to join our alumni network and get questions answered and a bunch of other things. But in order for me to know that you were trained by the Leadership Institute, number one, if you did not give me your actual name, you need to email me your name. So that's email Dina, D-E-N-A, at leadershipinstitute.org. Again, that's Dina at leadershipinstitute.org. If you are watching with 3 of your close friends and you're the only one that logged on and they're still on with you, please email me their names so that I can get credit for training them and they can get credit for having attended. So again, Dina at leadershipinstitute.org. If you want more information on the Leadership Institute trainings, they happen every single day online at leadershipinstitute.org/training. Go on there to take a look. And then we'll also be in person across the country this year, especially in Texas, in Kansas, in Arkansas, in Illinois this weekend, next weekend, and the following weekend. Look for us there. If you're going to be at CPAC, we'll be there as well. Anyway, I thank you so very much for coming out tonight. This was phenomenal. I'm sorry for the one little technical glitch that we had, or 2 technical glitches, but we got them figured out. And next time, I promise it'll be even more smooth. Thank you, Matt, for this opportunity to bring this training to this audience. I look forward to seeing what you guys all accomplish on these issues that are so very important. You have a great night. We'll see y'all later. Bye-bye.
Good.
And